Why can you breathe in a cigarette, but you can't breathe in a cigar? I don't know.
I have no idea.
These are the tough questions.
They are the tough questions. Yeah, smoking cigars, man. Yeah, it's part of the bonding thing, I think. Yeah, no, I'll check it out next time. We can do it.
We'll do a cigar next time.
Yeah.
I'll have some. There's just something about it. I think it's probably the nicotine as well. Just get that little kick on top of a nice little whiskey buzz.
Right.
It's a nice combo.
Yeah.
Anything to keep the conversation flowing. I'm all about it.
Yeah. No, you guys look pretty comfy when you were talking to your buddies. I've actually been pretty busy lately, so I have not. Normally, before I come in here, I make sure I watch a bunch of your episodes, but I have not kept up as well because I've just been super busy. But the one I did watch was the reporter on Josiah. I don't know where that fucking dude came from, but that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, Steve came out of left field.
I don't know.
This fascinating piece that he did on that.
So after I watched that whole thing because that's right on my alley, right? And then I went to his page, and the first article I clicked on was behind the paywall. Yeah. And just because I'm low on money right now, I'm not paying for media. But once I get better with money, I will definitely pay to read that dude's articles. I'll support him, no problem. I want to see what he's talking about. Because it's crazy. From what I understood, from what he said, he just only recently moved to Humboldt County, and 7 years later, he's super gung ho on top of this stuff. I'm like, wow, someone's still doing stuff on this? Okay, I want to hear what this dude has to say. Let's go.
Yeah, he's serious about it. He's serious about the work that he does, and serious about a story when he picks it up. I hadn't heard, in my mind prior to that conversation, it seemed pretty cut and dry that it looked like this was the guy that did it. And yeah, there was some evidence that maybe pointed to some other people, but circumstantial at best, and this is the guy that they wanted to get. And then you listen to that conversation, you think, oh shit. Is it the guy?
Yeah.
Or is this the guy that was just involved in the situation and how has been the scapegoat? And now all the attention is just on him and we're not looking at these other avenues.
Yeah. He definitely was hinting towards that. But I would like to read in detail what he wrote before I because people, when they write, they're so much more precise about what they're writing than when it's extemporaneous conversation. And most reporters are like that. I'm like that. I'm sure he is too, considering how detailed this guy was. But yeah, he's going to SAC to interview witnesses. I'm like, okay.
And I hadn't heard about the guy who had gotten into an altercation with Josiah in the morning. Was it the same morning prior to that or a couple days
This
before?
Is the Arcata Dad?
The Arcata Dad.
No, I never heard that either.
I had not heard that story.
From what I understand, he was saying it happened a few months before.
Okay. I knew it was prior, but I wasn't sure the length of time prior.
So I've heard people say, probably just in YouTube, probably just in social media comments and just people I talk to, people kind of say under their breath or as a side note, hey, Josiah wasn't some angel. He wasn't some saint kid. He kind of, they kind of would hint at this, and I'd always be like, okay, what does that mean? What are you saying? But I never actually got any information about what do you mean? And so that Arcata Dad story is a concrete story that I'd never heard that says, was a little story that, to rehash what he said on your pod is that some dude walked outside and was annoyed because a bunch of teenagers were making noise outside his house. He told them to chill out. It was probably at night.
Or scram, get out of here.
Yeah, get off my property, get out of here, move along. And they got pretty pissed. And next thing you know, he's brawling with some teenagers. And Josiah was one of the teenagers, if not the principal one. That's apparently what the story is, if I understand correctly. Okay, I'd never heard that. Let's say that's true. It doesn't really matter because the punishment for being a little bit of a teenage jerk is not to be killed.
Getting killed.
Yeah. So it doesn't really matter. Who cares? It's an interesting factoid, but it's not doesn't change the main story of what we're talking about. You know what I mean? But yeah, if he's out here interviewing, I forget what the suspect's name is, the kid who was charged and then released. But if he's out here interviewing that guy and actually has a relationship with him, that's pretty good. He's bringing new information out.
Well, imagine if you're that guy and you didn't do it.
Yeah.
You were just at a party and shit got sideways. Your girlfriend thinks her phone gets stolen and it all just blows up. And then now you're persona non grata in your own community.
Did Steve say that? Yeah, Kyle Zollner, that's his name. Did Steve say that he's still living around here or no?
I believe he still is living around here.
Okay.
I tried to get him on the podcast.
Oh, you did?
We'll see. I'm probably jinxing it by talking about it. Yeah, I communicated that I would be interested in talking with him, but I don't know if that'll ever amount to anything.
Wow.
Yeah. Just to talk to him. I also want to talk to Josiah Lawson's mom, but I feel like that's challenging because I don't want to. It just feels some type of way to be like, hey, do you want to come talk about your son? I reached out to her. I'm not sure. I need to look back into that. So I reached out to her a while ago about doing a podcast. I'm not sure whatever happened there. But yeah. Well, and you have to admit, it's pertinent information to know that story, without a doubt. But there is a weird thing that happens when somebody is killed. There's almost like an angelic effect that takes over. I mean, you saw that with George Floyd. Not to take away what happened to the guy, but his backstory is pertinent to that.
Totally,
and it just gets washed away.
Totally, dude.
In one moment, one circumstance, one situation, your backstory is just gone.
Totally.
And to bring it up and say, hey, maybe we should look at all of this, it's frowned upon.
Well,
not to make a judgment call about it, but that's just the situation that exists.
But in that situation, it's such an extreme example because people are calling him Saint George and
doing murals
and genuflecting in front of him and getting on their knees, and it's like, this guy is not a role model for how people should live their lives by any wild stretch.
But to say that isn't to say that he should have been killed.
Correct.
In that way.
We
can hold both of those ideas. And
correct.
Yeah, they're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah. That one does drive me a little bit crazy to tell you.
It's weird to see, right?
Yeah.
You're like, do you know anything about the story? Or you just know about the one moment with the cop, the one video everybody saw.
Right.
And we're just going to run with that. Okay.
Totally.
All right.
Dude, Charmaine, Josiah's mom, she talks to the media a lot. So I feel like she'd probably be interested. I don't know. I mean, I can't speak for her. Obviously, I don't know. Now, getting Kyle Zollner, I've never, other than Steve, I don't know anybody that's actually talked to him. So, I mean, that would...
And in an interview format, I don't know if any of the local organizations ever tried to reach out to him. I would imagine they'd have to try, right? To say, hey, let's get this kid side of the story.
This is now so long ago. This is already like 7 years ago that this happened. So
this was 2017.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is 7 years ago. If I remember correctly, the local media talked to someone who was talking on his behalf, who was like an uncle or some family member. And because I believe there were quotes from someone defending him who was a family member, who was the kind of guy probably who was like slicker talker and probably knew, hey, let me just be the one. You don't say anything. I'm the one. All the calls come to me. But I mean, that would really be cool if you had him on the pod. I imagine if you ever get him on the pod, the backstory to you getting him on the pod is that you had to meet up with him 5 times to prove that you're an okay guy. You had to meet 6 family members. You had to like have conversations, way long conversations. I don't think this is going to be, hey, I sent you an email. Okay, I'll be there at 3:00 on Thursday. I don't think that's happening. Like, I think you're going to have to work for it, dude.
Yeah.
But it's going to be so worth it if you do it.
I didn't think that's one of the things I now regret about not talking with Steve is I didn't ask him how he managed to get Kyle. Because I would imagine that guy is very cautious about speaking to anybody with any semblance of attachment to the media.
Well, he might be annoyed at the media. He also might have a lawyer who's telling him, no, you're not talking to the media. He might
probably not bad advice.
He might have a lawyer who needs to come and show up with him. And
well, that's what we were thinking was bringing Steve in here with him.
Oh.
And I'd be talking to both of them.
Oh, okay.
Which would kind of balance it out a little bit. Not that I'm just interested to hear that guy's side of the story.
Yeah.
See, like, what happened?
Well,
what do you remember?
I'm not sure whether, well, he didn't testify at the preliminary hearing. See, now I'm speaking out of my ass now a lot.
Because it was so long ago.
It was so long ago, I don't really remember. But if I understand correctly, he did not testify at his preliminary hearing because he doesn't have to. And so he has never told his version of what happened because he's not required to in a court proceeding, right? The prosecution has to say stuff, right? So I don't know whether he acknowledges that he got into a fight with Josiah and says, I got into a fight with him, but I'm not the one who stabbed him, or whether he would deny entirely getting into a fight. Do you know what he would say? or what he has said. I don't know.
I don't know. The problem is you go back and you read some of those articles and then the information is not current. Like the situation with the knives, prior to talking to Steve, I thought that was kind of settled evidence that there was a knife kit. He did have knives. One of the knives that was missing looked like a kitchen knife that he would have had in the set. And then it turns out, oh no.
And Steve said, no, the company said we don't use those sorts of knives. Right.
Which is kind of pertinent information to know.
Absolutely.
But then it leads the question, okay, if he didn't do it, somebody out there stabbed him and is just completely under the radar. Or maybe sitting in prison somewhere for some other crime and is completely detached.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that there's this subtext, I feel, that's always going on in the background of this case, which is that there is a belief that people know stuff that they're not telling the cops. And that, like, normally that phenomenon is talked about in like black neighborhoods, that you don't go and talk to the cops because if you do, you're a target. You just went and talked to the cops. You got this dude's friend into prison, and now that dude who's not in prison because it was just his friend, that dude's going to come with his buddies and get your ass, right? This is like a widely discussed kind of it's widely discussed, but not in like the public mainstream media about like a problem within black communities is that no one wants to talk to the cops. And therefore all these criminals are rolling around because the witnesses won't give the information to the cops to make the arrest.
Nobody's going to testify.
So my question is, like, is that part of what's going on here that people assume? Because I hear, again, like social media comments are, well, there's a lot of people who aren't talking. And I'm like, all right, who's not talking? Do we know who the specific people are that are not talking? Like, I'm trying to figure out.
Well, there were a lot of people at that party.
Yeah.
And a fight breaks out. Everybody's kind of gathered around trying to figure out what's going on. And it's dark. You're out on the street.
And everyone's drunk and high, presumably.
Everybody's, yeah.
So
I don't know like how many sober minds were involved in that situation.
Yeah. So like.
And maybe you think you see something, but it's dark. You're not quite sure who you saw or what you saw exactly. I don't know. It's tough. And I thought you were actually going to take that into a racial element. Because that is another underlying theme of this story is a young black kid. Right.
Well, no. So I am bringing up the racial element because the point is that that's a known thing within black neighborhoods.
Oh yeah, don't talk to the cop.
And so is that the same thing that's happening here where people are saying don't talk to the cop because there were a lot of black people at that party? I don't know. I'm asking.
I don't know. Were there a lot of black people at the party?
I assume there were, and that's the vibe I got from. But nobody wants to say that. Like it's like a weird.
You can't bring up race.
Yeah.
Even if you're just trying to be analytical about the situation.
And also the reporters, I don't think any reporters got to the party in time to report from the party. So how do we know who the race of the people at the party were? The cops in a report say, hey, we came upon 100 people. They don't say we came upon 100 black people, right?
And the cops did drop the ball. I mean, they didn't lock down the scene. They struggled with that. I don't think anyone would point to them and say this is an example of how you want that situation to unfold.
Did you read the National Police Foundation's report about the investigation into the investigation? Like, how do you know about like the cops not securing the scene? Like, where are you getting your information?
I mean, I got that from a number of stories back when it was going down.
Yeah.
There were people talking about how they didn't lock down the car. Somebody drove the car away. Kids were leaving. Nobody's stopping them. Other law enforcement agencies are showing up. Nobody's really taking charge. Steve brought that issue up too.
Correct.
But no, I didn't read the review. Did you read that?
Yes. So the only reporting that I did on this whole story is that when the National Police Foundation came out with their report, and to be clear, basically this was this group of retired cops who investigate investigations. So in addition to other work that they do, but specifically the city of Arcata hired these guys because there was so much criticism of the city said, all right, in order to appease the activists and people who are pissed off at us, we will hire these independent people to analyze how our police department is functioning in our investigation of this crime. And so those guys came in and they list their credentials on their website. They're retired cops, and they published this report. When they published that report, because this report I found to be so shocking and so newsworthy, I did a big video on this where I basically just summarized what was in this report because I think it's so important. So instead of people having to read a 60-page report, you can watch my 6-minute video in which I summarize what they're saying. And they tore Arcata Police a new asshole. I mean, it is relentless. It is just a series of laying down how they screwed up what they did. Which was the reason, part of my motivation, because I invested a lot of time in this story because I was so, reading the report, I just couldn't believe it. I mean, it was because I read some other media that summarized it. I was like, I got to read this for myself. I can, and then, I mean, yeah, it's just tearing Arcata Police a new asshole. And the reason why that's significant, at least for me politically, is that when the activists were complaining about how the cops responded to the crime and how they were investigating it, my first reaction is, oh, wokeists are complaining about something, cry me a fucking river, It's like, don't take anything wokeists say seriously.
They're just grabbing at straws.
They're just complaining because that's what they do, right? The problem is that what's the saying, like a broke clock is right twice a day? Sometimes the wokeists are right. And in this case, these dudes from the National Police Foundation who are retired cops, they're probably not that interested in wokeism. They basically said everything the wokeists were saying. Like, the wokeists were right. They had a good point. So that was very surprising to me. And I kind of felt like I needed to do a story to talk to other people with my viewpoint on the world to say, hey guys, I know that those people are silly 90% of the time, but this is an example of the 10% where they're actually making good points because we have it documented by outside experts. So yeah, it was amazing.
Is that up on your YouTube page?
Yes.
Which people can find
at Arcata News. So
little plug for that.
Yeah, thank you. So my YouTube channel is Arcata News. What did I call the video? I mean, it'll be obvious if you just scroll through especially if you go to my Humboldt County News playlist on my channel, you'll see the video.
I'm gonna have to look at that report now.
Okay. Yeah, good.
And watch your video.
Please do.
For the summer as well.
Yeah. So so there were two outside experts that trashed the Arcata Police Department. There's that report, and then there's the FBI consultant who was brought in. Steve alluded to these things quickly during your conversation, but because he was talking about so many things, he didn't focus on it. There was an FBI consultant that came to help out in the investigation, and he trashed the Arcata Police Department on the way out.
I think I was aware of that.
Yeah. I mean, he said that he would call the police chief and ask the police chief questions. Okay, what's going on with the investigation? What's with this? What's with that? And the police chief would have to say, I'll check and get back to you. And he's like, how could you be the police chief and not have these are like the most basic questions. How could you not know the answer to these? That you have to check is not acceptable. They're basic questions. Especially
a high profile case. There's a lot of movement around it. You would think this would be something you would want to keep up on.
Yeah.
So you know what's going on the ground.
Now, the wokists will add the extra element that the reason that this investigation is going so poorly is because they don't care about the life of a black kid. The cops, no one specifically has said that. I mean, the FBI consultant speculated about that, but no one can know what someone's thinking and how they would react in a different situation. That's speculation, obviously. When I say the wokists are correct, I'm saying that they're correct in that the investigation has been terrible and it's awful police work. We can't
extrapolate that far.
I'm not saying, and the reason they've done the bad police work is because the kid's black. That I don't know.
Yeah, how would you prove that? Unless you had correspondence between the officers or body cam footage where it was explicit that they were negligent because of race.
Right.
But it's crazy that it was 7 years ago.
It's a long time ago.
7 years ago, and basically a cold case.
Yep.
Cold case for some. For some, they think they know who the guy is and he's just walking free.
Right.
Would not want to be Kyle. Also wouldn't want to be Charmaine. I mean, I can't imagine what she's going through and trying to keep this alive and keep people engaged because obviously you want to get justice for your son, whatever that justice looks like. You want to find who's accountable.
Totally.
And you're just fighting time.
But I mean, the police chief in Arcata has switched over. The city manager has switched over. The district attorney has switched all since 2017. And the case isn't changing, which means it's a cold case. I mean, I know he said, when I call Arcata police and ask basic questions, they tell me it's an active investigation, but it's actually a cold case. Yeah, because I
There's
mean,
no new evidence.
there's nothing going on. It's 7 years later. What are they going to do? And the new district attorney, there was hope people would say, oh, when the new DA comes in, she'll charge him again. It's like, no, she hasn't done that.
I talked to Stacey Eads, I believe, during her campaign. I had her on and I brought that up and we talked about it briefly. And there's some, I don't know if it's a 3-strike rule where you can't try somebody for the same case 3 times. You can't try anybody for a case 3 times.
Well, you can't try someone even more than once, but he's never been tried. It only got to the preliminary hearing. A preliminary hearing you can bring, I think, as many times as possible, or maybe the 3 is relates to that. But there's a difference between a trial and a preliminary hearing. He only was brought to a preliminary hearing, not to trial. Once you're brought to trial, it's one time and you're done.
Oh man, it was a long time that I had her on, but I want to say what she was saying, and this is all speculative, so go watch the episode. I think there was something in place where she could only bring it forward one more time. And so she was trying to be very cautious about bringing it forward willy-nilly and having the end result being he walks again.
Right.
That was my understanding.
Okay.
If I'm remembering correctly. I just don't remember what it was on. But it was like they only had one more chance to get him.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that.
Right. Yeah. No, these things are
swinging from the hip. That's my whole life out here. Just
that's podcast style.
But,
dude.
oh yeah. Yeah, I don't know what you do. I don't know how you handle that. I don't know what a resolution looks like now 7 years later. Other than finding the guy, but how do you find him?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that caused a lot of upheaval. That was such a crazy time.
I wasn't here for that. I was out of state going to school.
Oh, okay.
So I had heard through the grapevine bits of the story as it was unfolding, and then obviously kind of checked into it when I got back and started doing the podcast, but that all unfolded while I was gone.
Yeah, I mean, crazy times.
Crazy times right now.
Crazy times.
There's a lot of crazy times. Crazy times all over the place.
Yeah.
No shortage.
Yeah.
Does feel like maybe one day, hopefully, we'll get back to some quieter times. Do you think, or you think we're just ramping up for good now?
No, I mean, I think the times right now are much quieter than the George Floyd era. I mean, dude, that was
pretty crazy.
That was massive demonstrations, looting, rioting all over the United States. I mean, I don't feel like we're in that sort of stage. I feel like compared to that, we're very chill. Like that was craziness, dude.
Yeah, the summer of love. As they tried to brand it.
Is that what? Okay,
that's what they tried to call it.
Oh, really?
Summer of love.
Yeah.
I think that was I don't want to misspeak. Maybe the mayor of Seattle or something. It was when they were doing the Chaz, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. He's like, oh, God. They're all just peaceful. This is going to be the summer of love.
Sure, bro.
Yeah, that didn't pan out very well.
Yeah.
In that regards, yes, we have quieted down. We don't have demonstrations like that. The Palestine-Israel stuff kind of ramped up for a moment, but then they squashed it. Summer break, added some water to the fire.
And Palestine, Israel is still staying mostly within the realm of just demonstrations. Yes, people saying some crazy things at the demonstrations, but there's just an enormous difference between people saying crazy things and people looting stores. There's just an enormous difference. Like, I don't care what you say. Like, just say what you got to say and who cares, right? But like those videos during those riots in 2019 or 2020, I guess it was, where you're just constantly in all these cities seeing people blasting into these stores. I mean, it's craziness. It's craziness.
Buildings on fire, cars on fire.
Everything. I mean, a police precinct in Minnesota on fire, like all this stuff.
Burned down.
Yeah, burned down. I mean,
they should make a documentary about that. A non-biased, they're not trying to push any agenda either side. Just make a documentary about what happened during those riots. Because I bet there's a ton of footage, phone footage, video cameras.
Yeah.
You could put something really interesting together. I don't know if anybody would ever actually do that because it would take a lot of work.
Well, it's just such dramatic footage because like the sorriest footage, like that, like some of the stuff that like is like the most sad is when you see like when there's like closed circuit footage of like a poor little shopkeeper who's like, you know, running his little store and guys just blasting in and coming in with masks and just like overwhelming him and he's trying to fight back and there, you know, there's like 7 guys, you know, and it's just like.
But luckily they were just stealing food and like necessary supplies to live. You know,
Yeah. Okay.
because it would have been a different story if they were stealing TV
And cigarettes and
shoes
alcohol. Right. Yeah.
that would
yeah.
be completely different.
Right.
But they were just taking food.
Sure.
You know, health food too. Nothing canned. It was all fresh.
Right. Organic produce. Yeah. Break it in to take the organic produce. Yeah. Those videos are, those always get me. And you know, and it's always, it just half the time, it's like an ethnic minority shopkeeper, an immigrant guy who's came here and it's like working 16 hours a day and completely busting his ass, you know, and like probably speaks English not that well and has not a lot of formal education, but it's just, you know, chasing the American dream and killing it, you know, and it's like, please don't do this to this guy. Please fucking don't do this to this guy, you know, and whatever, it still happens. What am I going to do?
I watched a video of, I think it was a black guy, and he was out on the street screaming as they were looting and thrashing his shop, and he's screaming, I'm one of you guys. Like I support the agenda and I support your guys' cause, but you're ruining my business. You're ruining my livelihood. Like you're taking everything from me. I don't even understand why. And they don't.
I take it
care.
that wasn't that convincing, and people weren't like, "Oh my."
No, he was convincing because he's, you know, on the brink of tears, standing out on the street, screaming.
Yeah,
but people are just fucking, running by.
Yeah.
You think anything like that's going to happen after the election? We're what, 20-something days?
We're
30
close.
days?
But dude, this election is not as hot as the last two even. I mean, it's definitely not as hot as 2016 and even 2020, because 2020 was COVID. That made it because not as many people were out and about. But I still don't feel like this election is really that intense. In my world, it's not as intense. First of all, I think the people are used to Trump by now. It's his third time running, right? We're used to it. Yeah, Trump's a thing, right? I don't think that it's quite, and the craziness on social media of people, like the whole comparing Trump to Hitler is not happening anymore. I don't feel in any large quantities. People have like, okay, we know Trump is a thing. He was president. There were no concentration camps of millions of people. Okay, you want to say he put immigrants in cages. If you don't like his immigration policy, whatever.
Don't look at Obama.
Yeah, right. But even if you are so crazy about that, life went on. Like we all survived the Trump era. Like my life was perfectly fine when Trump was president. 2016, like when in the lead up to 2016, I mean that was, I don't feel like politics will ever get that crazy. And I feel, plus I don't think people hate Kamala Harris as much as they hate Hillary Clinton. That's the other thing. Kamala, I think people don't have that much of an opinion about her because she's kind of just vanilla. She's like Democratic presidential candidate X. She's not really her own person. Like she doesn't say anything.
Just slot her in anywhere.
She's kind of like this piece of clay that you can mold if you're the Democratic Party. She's not really like an individual candidate. That's the way I see her. She definitely has trouble answering questions substantively. I mean, that's an understatement. And even like people that are blatantly supporting her are like, not amazing. This appearance.
Keep the teleprompter.
Yeah. Basically, yes.
I don't know. Part of me agrees. But then part of me wants to say, yeah, but Trump got shot at twice. You know,
that's true.
2 assassination attempts is nothing to squawk at.
It's not. But then again, that's one person. It's 2 people. Right. We're not. I'm talking about how like the mass culture is
an organized movement.
Yeah. No, you're right. I don't mean to minimize that.
Part of me thinks that it's almost the calm before the storm because both sides think their candidate is going to win, and only one person is going to. And once the election happens, then the chaos is going to happen because one side's going to be very unhappy with the election results.
Yeah, I mean.
I might just be on Twitter too much. I'm thinking about this as we're talking about this because I see a lot of it going both ways. People still think Trump's Hitler. People think Kamala's retarded.
When you say, but even the people that think that their candidate's going to win, they know that it's a pretty close election. Like if you better not, like no one's who's informed is super confident that their guy's going to win. It's a super close election. It's going to be very close. It's going to be decided by a few thousand votes in the key states. Like the script is already Like it's all very predictable. Like, and either Trump's going to get the 50,000 votes that he needs in Pennsylvania, or Kamala's going to get the 35,000 votes she needs in Pennsylvania, and that's going to be the election. Everybody else doesn't matter. California doesn't matter. I mean, most states don't matter because they're just blatantly one side or the other. I don't know. I don't know. At least for me, just my social media hasn't been that crazy. Now I unfollow crazy people. And so if you're just too hysterical, I don't want to hear from you, and I don't want you taking up time in my day. And I'm very good about not following crazy people on Twitter. So like my Twitter is a lot of times when people complain about Twitter, I'm like, oh, it's a bunch of smart people. But that's because I'm just, if you get too crazy, you're out.
See, I like to have a little bit of crazy in there. Not overcome with crazy, but just have just a little taste, just to see what's going on the fringe.
Dude, if you're calling Kamala a communist, I'm dumping you. That's not interesting. You're not helping me understand anything. I don't want to hear about communism in the United States. I mean, there's like 4 communists in the United States. Kamala isn't one of them. She is in bed with all these corporations. So give me a break about her being a communist. So I don't want to hear it. So I just dump people. I am very strict about the unfollow button is a big button that I use on Twitter. So.
She does have some very progressive ideals, but even saying that, she doesn't seem attached to them because she's constantly changing her stance. And everything's very ephemeral.
She has reversed a lot. Yes, she has.
We're going to frack. Oh, I know I said we're not going to frack, but now we're going to.
Correct. She has gone back.
I'm not going to take anybody's guns. Don't look at the clip of me saying we're going to have a mandatory gun buyback. We're not going to do that.
Correct. What are some other ones?
Immigration. She's taking a hard line now against it. She's
Correct.
Trying to say, we need to shut down the border. Look at what we've done. Don't look at the other 3.5 years, but.
Well, and this is, I mean, a lot of it is because the last time she ran in the Democratic primary in the 2020 election, the Democratic Party was having these convulsions over the George Floyd. And so they were adopting these crazy left cultural positions. And because Kamala doesn't really have her own ideas about the world or about politics, she just goes along with what Democrats are saying. She is the clay that you can mold. Now Democrats have kind of like calmed down a little bit. Like wokeism, in my opinion, I agree with people who are saying it's receding. It's not dominating the conversation. Oh, now she's more common sense. No, I'm frustrated by that she went along with it in 2020. But, you know, I'm also happy that she's gone away from it because I think it was silly. So, but yeah, when she's asked questions, she can't seem to speak intelligently about like a substantive policy issue. I mean, her speech at the Democratic Convention was fine. I mean, but again, that's a teleprompter, and like, you know, that's a.
It's not hard to read off teleprompter. You might be uncomfortable being in front of people, but the words are right there. She's done it
her whole life. I mean, she's an experienced politician, right? She's going to be able to do that. I don't know.
Do you think she can't answer questions off the cuff or not use a teleprompter because she doesn't know how to be honest about the issues she's talking about? Or do you think it's just because she doesn't stand for something necessarily that it's kind of hard for her to navigate those situations?
The person who I trust the most I follow this guy, Zed Jelani, who is a really, really interesting guy on Twitter. And he's kind of like a left populist. So he's definitely a horseshoe guy because he was big into Bernie Sanders, but he's also big. He's very nonpartisan. So he kind of like constantly is pointing out when he agrees with like Trump and Republicans, even though he's this known progressive, because he's just not partisan. He's saying, no, what Trump is saying here in this particular instance, I like, this is good. You know, he's very able to do that. I like people like that. I'm like that. And he's constantly saying about Kamala that essentially she's just not that intellectually curious and that she just doesn't know that much about policy. She advanced her way in the world. She's good looking. Male politicians also get ahead from being good looking. It's not just a female thing, right?
Gavin Newsom.
Yeah.
Case in point.
Bill Clinton. I mean,
Bill Clinton.
You know, George W. Bush, when he was young, was super good looking. Ronald Reagan was an actor, right? This happens to men all the time. JFK, everybody, RFK. It's like,
well, his voice kind of, I think, fucked him a little bit.
His voice is, but he's 70 years old and still sleeping with 30-year-old cute reporters, you know?
Allegedly.
Right. Yeah, so Zed Jelani, who I trust a lot on this, he's just saying that she's just not that curious. She doesn't have ideas about this stuff. She doesn't read books. She doesn't look into policy. She's kind of just floated her whole life. That's what he's saying. And I trust him on that.
It's kind of a scary thought.
It is weird because if you're an attorney general, like that's not like it's one thing if you're a senator, like you can just bullshit if you're like a senator because you're not actually in charge of anything, you're just giving speeches. But when you're attorney general, you're actually like an executive, like you're running and you have to like enforce stuff. You know, it's like being a governor, right? And she was a district attorney also. Like you got to know what's going on. And she just, maybe she does know stuff and she is just afraid of saying the wrong thing. So she just reverts to these word salads that she says and starts talking about how she has this middle class upbringing. You know, that's become like a meme where because that's her answer to everything. I grew up as a middle class. Hey, that's not relevant to the question you were just asked. Stop going to that. So I don't know what the answer is, why she has this problem, but it is a problem because, hey, what do you think about this? And she can't give straight answers about anything. It's just about that, hey, we valued our lawn and we were middle class. I don't care about that, dude. We've heard that.
Get back to the issue.
Yeah. So, I mean, what do you think it is?
I don't know. I don't know why she gets that way. It seems that she gets very flustered. And when I see somebody get flustered like that, maybe I'm jaded or biased, but my inclination is, okay, what do you... Like, are you lying about something? Why are you getting so nervous about this issue? Are you ashamed of your track record? Which, that's an interesting aspect because she does, in some ways, try to separate herself from the administration. But then, I think she was asked on The View if she would have done anything different from Joe Biden, and she said, no, we're pretty much aligned on everything, except maybe I will have a Republican in my cabinet. It's like, that's your distinction from Joe Biden, the guy that claims he likes to cross the aisle and get support from both sides. That's how you're going to separate yourself from him.
But it's a tough spot. I mean, how is she like? That's always a thing when the vice president is running. I mean, I don't remember exactly. I mean, the last time the vice president ran was the nominee was probably when Al Gore ran in 2000. Yeah, that was definitely the last time. Like the sitting vice president was running for president, and I would like to look back and see how he separated himself from Bill Clinton because Bill Clinton was the president at the time. It just seems it's a very tough spot. Like, if she separates from him on policy, well, she's still got like 4 months to work with him, like just on a personal level. Then all the questions are going to be about, then Biden's going to have to answer questions about, hey, Kamala's contradicting you on the campaign trail. It's like dicey. Like, I don't know what she's supposed to do. Even if she has in her mind, hey, these are the things that I think Biden is doing that's bad, and I'm going to change them. Like saying that is
dangerous.
It's dangerous. I mean, I feel for her is what I'm saying. I'm sympathetic in some sense for her not wanting to depart with him. But what other people are pointing out is that the polls, like the surveys, show that people want her to separate herself from Biden. Biden's not that popular. So maybe she should just deal with it for 4 months, have him get mad at her, make him have to, who cares if he has to answer those questions? She's trying to be president. Fuck him, right?
Yeah, his time's up.
Yeah, his time's up.
Questions around why his time is up, but that aside, his time is up. She's the candidate.
Yeah, last time I talked to you, that was before he got shit canned.
He was still running the last time we talked. When did we?
The end of June is when I checked the date that he posted it. Yeah,
man.
Yeah.
I don't know. As a voter and as someone who feels very strongly about the truth, that bothers me. But Trump lies. I mean, there's valid criticisms there too. But when you have a candidate that it just openly flip-flops and is so open about it that there's videos of her saying completely contradictory statements, that is hard for me to untangle.
And I think people can evolve over the course of time and change their mind, but it would be nice if people would explain why they've evolved. Like fracking is kind of a big deal. Like it's quite important. Energy, how we're going to get energy is very important. So if you were against it and now you've seen the light, just tell us why you saw the light.
What made you change your mind?
Yeah, it's not, you should be able to articulate it.
It's not a trick question.
No, it's not a guy.
You're the one that changed your mind. I would assume that there was a catalyst for doing that.
It's exactly. Now, speaking of energy, to take this in another direction.
Here we go.
I was just covering the Redwood Coast Energy Authority.
Oh, man, I was hoping you were going to bring that up.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No, continue. I don't want to interrupt you.
Well, no, you continue because I want to.
No, you started this.
Okay.
Let's see where you're going to go.
Okay. So the first thing is, again, we want to plug all my social media. That's the most important thing to do here, right? So I'm going to produce a story for Instagram because I'm now big on Instagram.
Okay.
I'm putting out the video footage of that meeting from RCEA. This should go up within the next couple days. Arcata News on Instagram. Arcata News on Instagram. It's different than my Facebook, my previous news stories, because I don't anchor. I don't jump in. I just give you the highlights of the clips. And I'm trying to make it social media friendly with the text that's showing exactly what the person's saying.
Okay, stepping up the game a little bit.
Doing a little different thing. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out different ways to do my thing. So this is what I'm doing right now. So to summarize for people who have no idea what we're talking about, and it's very convoluted because the energy is going to be produced either way. But essentially, there's nuclear energy being produced in Diablo Canyon, which is south of San Francisco somewhere. It's Monterey Peninsula something. I have to look it up before I post this because I'll have to put that in the description. And the local community choice aggregator, which is like our local alternative to PG&E, which is Redwood Coast Energy Authority, had to decide whether they were going to include nuclear energy as part of our portfolio for RCEA's customers. Now, the reason why I say this is tricky is that RCEA cannot control the source of the electrons that come flowing through the wires and that come and actually make your light go on, because it's all operated by the grid. It's part of the grid anyway. But the question is whether we're contracting with them specifically or whether we're contracting with other people to put other sources of energy into the grid. In the case of Diablo Canyon, all ratepayers in California, if you're connected to the grid, you're paying for this nuclear energy, whether it's considered part of our portfolio or not. You're paying for it. The question is, are we going to officially make it part of our portfolio and therefore endorse it? By making it part of our portfolio, it could have saved RCEA money.
Which in turn would have saved us money, presumably.
Correct. They don't have the exact numbers yet, but it would have reduced RCEA's budget deficit, which indirectly probably at some point would have saved ratepayers money. Alternatively, it could have been used to swap out less environmentally friendly sources of energy, which meant we could have not saved the customer money, but instead have reduced the amount of carbon emissions that the energy that we buy produces. So the one track is it could have been used to save money. The other track is you don't save money, but you produce less carbon. RCEA turned down this opportunity, which I think is silly and just ridiculous. For basically, I'm trying to figure out this. I've had this issue for a while with progressives. Like, you have to choose between the alternatives that are in front of you. And my problem with progressives in so many circumstances is that they compare everything to utopia. And it's like, I mean, the commissioners at the meeting were saying, what message will it say about Humboldt County if we accept this energy? And I'm like, what message will it will say that Humboldt County is reasonable and prefers nuclear energy to, for one, fossil fuel-based energy, because it's more environmentally friendly. And it is. It doesn't emit carbon. That's quite good. I'm not a climate alarmist, okay? And I think a lot of times the left exaggerates the threat of climate change. But climate change, the core thing is correct, right? By burning gas and coal and oil, we do increase the Earth's average temperature. I don't deny that. I don't think it's as big a crisis as people are talking about. But if you can avoid doing it, then you should avoid doing it. I don't think you should screw the entire society in order to set that goal of reducing emissions. But if you have the chance to do it, you should do it. You should try to reduce emissions. And nuclear energy does not produce carbon emissions. It's great. It's awesome. And I don't know why people are against it. The main argument against it is that you have these spent fuel rods that basically are like, after you've created the energy, it's this kind of like weird chemical matter that is left over that you have to do something with. And there's no way to really get rid of it. It stays for millions of years or hundreds of thousands of years. I'm not that concerned about that. I think that we need to develop good strategies for storing that stuff, but we don't have a record of that stuff hurting people in any significant way. So I don't understand what the big deal is about storing that stuff. And so people are like, so RCEA in the end decided not to accept this freebie. And one of the staff people even called it a freebie and decided not to accept it. And I'm
freebie that ratepayers are still paying for.
Sorry, I shouldn't call it a freebie because you're totally right. A thing that
an expense that we're all paying that now we will not have access to.
Exactly. What is going on?
People are retarded.
Dude.
That was my reading that. And I just read, I don't know if it was a local article or what, but I was reading the article and I was just not surprised. I would laugh if it wasn't so sad that people think nuclear energy is the worst option out of the options we currently have, which cleanest energy that we can produce is nuclear energy, but that's the bad kind. So we don't want that.
Dude, like, okay, these people, like,
they just don't know anything. And they hear these buzzwords and they hear, spent nuclear fuel or whatever, or the waste byproduct, and that we have to store that. And they start freaking out. And they don't realize that it's a very small amount. Wouldn't be expensive to store that in some facility or do something else with it, especially compared to the byproducts of every other type of energy that we have.
Correct.
If we're burning coal or we're shipping fuel over from some Middle Eastern country or whatever we're doing, or getting solar panels from China and having those shipped over here.
Yeah.
We have the nuclear power plant down south in California. You're already paying for it. Where's the hang up? Oh, you just don't like nuclear? You don't like that word? Okay.
I am befuddled. I listened to that and people were saying, well, it's not green energy because to build the plant, you need to use fossil fuels. Dude, well then solar isn't green. Then there's no such thing as green energy because in order to build those turbines that are going to go in the sea, they're going to have to use fossil fuels for the energy to create the turbines.
And they use oil.
Yeah.
And they bury the turbine blades in fields. The turbine blades don't last forever.
Okay.
And they don't know what to do with them, so they just bury them.
And they bury them.
Yeah, there are these mass graveyards of just giant wind turbines. Tell me how that is
that I haven't heard of.
Friendly to the planet.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So that's somewhat similar to the fuel rods. Although I guess the concern with the fuel rods is that because it's like this toxic matter that it could explode. But has it ever exploded? I don't think there's...
People are just afraid of nuclear because they think, not Hiroshima, Nagasaki. They think of 3 Mile Island and they think of Chernobyl and
Fukushima Daiichi.
And Fukushima.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know how many people have died as a result of nuclear energy, but I think it's incredibly small, like quite possibly single digits small. Don't quote me on that one either. But
that I think was correct up until Fukushima, because didn't Fukushima...
I can pull this up. You keep talking.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure.
See, this would be the TV situation that I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, I'm just befuddled by this whole thing.
Well, and shame on RCEA for not trying to provide more information to the people that were speaking on the issue, saying that it's not green energy and that this isn't what Humboldt County wants to be known for.
Well, but the commissioners themselves kind of went along with this doomsday scenario of saying that, what will this say about Humboldt County? And again, like I said, I think it will say that Humboldt County is reasonable and that we have our feet on the ground and that we are, not hysterical about sources of energy.
Fukushima actually had no casualties.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And they think Chernobyl, it was 31.
Okay.
In comparison, fossil fuels are the deadliest energy source overall, causing 8.7 million deaths each year from air pollution.
Well, because of coal, yeah.
Yeah, but thank God we don't have nuclear energy because...
So yeah, going through the list. Okay, so we have the option of fossil fuels, but that is going to... that's got the problem of climate change. We were supposed to have an on-land wind farm here in Humboldt County, but Native Americans prey on that hill. This was the 2019 Terrigen, and so the Board of Supervisors voted against it, so we can't have the proven technology of wind power on land. Okay, next thing, we're going to have an offshore wind farm. But again, at this point, that's science fiction. There is no wind farm in the world that in the water as deep as Humboldt County's water, which is 10,000 feet deep, 20 miles off the coast. That is science fiction at this point. That is not proven technology in contrast to what was going to be on land. So if we're saying that's going to happen, it might happen and it very well might not happen. It's science fiction right now. Scientists are working on it. Good for them. I'm happy. But like relying on that as your main thing is not an amazing idea. So we have this nuclear option, which to me doesn't have any of those huge drawbacks. It's also proven technology that does not have carbon emission. And we're going to say that it's horrible. And I'm just like, okay, compared to utopia, yeah, ideally you wouldn't have these spent fuel rods. Ideally, so this is the thing, progressives talk like there's going to be this energy source that like drops out of the sky that has no drawbacks. Like it has no spent fuel rods. It's not on the hill where Native Americans want to pray. It doesn't emit carbon. It's not science fiction. It's proven technology, even though it's going to drop out of the sky and it doesn't exist yet. And I'm like, guys, yeah, if that energy source appears, I'll support it. Yeah. But that doesn't exist. Can we please choose between the options that actually exist? And this is no small issue. This is like how we power our entire civilization, bro. This is like the whole, like, we're in caves if we don't have energy.
And if you had to think of some utopia that is attainable today, it would be through nuclear power. That's the funniest thing.
Yeah. And okay, this is my speculation that I think that, and this is very like philosophical, but this is kind of, I think, what's behind a lot of it, is that like nuclear power signifies like people conquering nature because we are able to we figured out how to create this combination that just gives us, it almost is magic, right? Because it's not, it doesn't emit it's like this awesome source of energy. It's so awesome. It doesn't make the Earth's temperature heat up. It's awesome. It has this tiny drawback of having these spent fuel rods, but everything's going to have a drawback. And people who are, the left tends to want to say like their like first principles is based on, oh, the Earth is so natural and harmonious and in balance, and man and people come along and we spoil it, right? And we're so greedy and we make nature worse. And I'm like, no, it's not like that at all. Actually, creating civilization is quite good. I like modern society and I would like to continue to live in it. So
you like that iPhone that's in your hands?
Yes.
That's not in nature.
No, it's not natural at all. Instagram is not like natural.
Yeah, your Starbucks Frappuccino is not, you're not going to find that out in the woods.
No.
Good luck foraging for that.
Exactly. So that just drove me nuts. So anyway, my joke is that I came up with this, you can insert the laugh track here. I want to start a party in Humboldt County that will be an appropriate home for a lot of people here. And it's going to be the PAFE party, PAFE, Progressives Against Fucking Everything. That's my new political party, Progressives Against Fucking Everything. So many people in Humboldt County will be at home in that party. My new rule for PAFEs is that if you're going to speak at a public meeting, you can talk about what you're against, but you must also include what you're for. Because as far as I'm concerned, you are just against absolutely fucking everything, which is why you're a PACE, Progressive Against Fucking Everything. And if you had your way, we would be living in caves. And then you'd say, yes, he's cooking his dinner over an open fire. He's warming his cave with the fire. Everything's fine, right? I don't want to live that way. So I want to hear from you what your plan is to actually have a civilization. End of my rant.
I like the message. I think the name could use a little tweak.
Oh, dude, I thought the name was so clever.
The acronym is not great.
Why not?
It's not catchy. You need something that like sticks with you. I think a lot of people would align with that. Well, the problem is people are just not informed. I mean, I don't even think the nuclear energy thing is that deep. I think people hear nuclear, they think nuclear bombs, they think Chernobyl. We can't have that. Get rid of it.
Right.
Meanwhile, that's the cleanest energy that we have available to us.
Well,
and we have the facility. It's being recommissioned. They're going to produce energy from it. we're going to pay for that energy.
And
we might as well access.
And we're going to use it because you can't control what it all comes from the grid. You can't say, "Oh, don't send us any of that."
I only want clean energy.
You can't do that
from fossil fuels.
So it's just when you say people. I mean, but I mean, when people get up to speak at public meetings, I don't hold them to that high a standard, right? Anybody can say whatever they want, but these are the commissioners. I'm talking about what the commissioners said. I was so frustrated by what the commissioners who run the organization and make the decisions were saying. It's like
they're just not informed. And I think that's the saddest part of all. It's one thing for their constituents to not know, but for them to be making these decisions and not know is just, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, also, there's also this problem at public meetings. Like, okay, so I was there. I was reporting. I'm not going to speak when I'm reporting. But you like people who have your viewpoint and my viewpoint, we're not showing up at these meetings to say this. Like,
because we have shit to do with our lives.
Well,
that's because we're actually doing things.
But the people, like, this is like a problem with a lot of things in like the public process is whoever's against it is more passionate than whoever's for it. Like, not one person spoke in favor of this at this meeting. And for me, this is like such a no-brainer. Yes, we want to receive the product that we're already paying for. Yes, we want to receive that. We don't want to pay for stuff that we're not. I mean, forget about the fact that it's so clean. Like this is part of our bill anyway. Like
you're paying for it.
Yeah. I mean, I was just really like, this is crazy.
You should have said something. I mean, I know that you can't because you're in a different role there, but
yeah,
it would have been interesting to see how that all would have played out had somebody stood up and said, "Hey guys, this is the cleanest energy that we have access to. We don't want to be known for that."
Well, this argument that it's not green energy and that they're lying when they call it green energy, that was to me the most frustrating part. Because when they say, "Oh, but they built the plant using fossil fuels," dude, by that standard, there's no such thing as clean energy in the world. Solar's not clean. And the other thing, it's good that you bring it up, is that I mean, all these renewable energies they all have their own problems. The big problem with them is that we don't control how much the sun shines and the wind blows. That's the main problem, and that's a huge problem. We need to have massive battery storage in order to make it a significant portion of our energy supply. And right now, the battery storage isn't that good. We don't have all these batteries. It requires like massive batteries to power our whole civilization. And that's an enormous issue. Then you bring up the other issue of the fact that China controls the supply chain of all these things, the batteries. Basically, they're making all this stuff and we can't have our energy supply dependent on China. That would screw us. You can't have that. So like, I want to hear from these PAFEs, unless you tell me that we're going to use a different acronym. You need to come up with something else. Otherwise, I'm using PAFE. They need to tell me what they do support for their energy source. And wind energy, don't tell me that, because until that comes online, that's not an option.
Well, and wind energy is fascinating in the way that they're trying to implement it, because there's some discussion around, first, the efficacy of it, and second off, what it does to the area that you build it in. There is a wind farm off the East Coast somewhere, and there were a lot of whales washing up, dying. I'm not sure if you're familiar with a reporter named Michael Schellenberger. Yeah, super interesting guy. He did a documentary on it.
I watched it.
Was it good? I haven't seen the documentary yet.
Yeah.
So you explain it then, because you'll be able to explain that part of it better than I can.
So this was about, I watched it about a year and a half ago, so I might be fuzzy. If we're talking about the same, he made about a 27-minute, as I remember, it's not like a full feature-length movie. The documentary was actually not about what the turbines themselves do. It was about the exploration of the sea in order to build the turbines, if I remember correctly. So it's basically they have to like map the floor of the sea to figure out what's going on. And they use that with these sounds that basically, I think that they're,
it's like high decibel sonar, right?
Yeah, it's sonar is that catchword, and the whales hear it and it bothers them, and it totally screws up their, like, this alien thing is coming into their world, and I believe it led to a death of a bunch of whales. The U.S. government denied this, but there are a dissident group of scientists that say no, it is completely screwing up marine life. Now, to be clear, I don't really care if we're killing a bunch of whales. Like, to me, I don't care about this stuff at all. We need to build our civilization. If this is the way we're going to make power, I'm not tripping on that shit. I watched it just because at the time I was reporting a lot on wind energy and I kind of want to know, and I know other people care about it, so I would mention it if I was reporting. But my personal view is if we got to kill a bunch of whales, fuck them. Like,
I'm out here swinging from the hip to that, huh?
Well, dude, I mean, like,
fuck the whale. No, I get what you're saying.
I mean,
there's some trade-offs.
Yeah. So I wish, I don't want to speak in more depth about the movie because, again, this is a year and a half, 2 years ago that I watched this. But yeah, I mean, he's saying that and it's obvious, you're industrializing the sea, dude. You're creating this massive, enormous industry in like this pristine area that has no human. Humans come through with their boats, but they're in and out. They pass through any particular space and they come back to shore. These are going to be cities, basically, industries, warehouses almost, think of them as, even though they're not covered. But
well, and the maintenance, and then what happens if one of those things starts leaking out into the ocean? I mean,
Right.
There are a lot of other factors. And the reality is, I mean, they built another one off the coast of England, and it was pitched as, oh, this is going to bring energy prices down. This is going to be so great for the local community. And it was a complete lie. They pay more now in energy than they ever have because of these turbines, because they don't produce enough. They're what they capture from the wind and can convert to real tangible energy is just piss poor. And this is all in the context of we have the capability for nuclear energy.
correct,
We don't have to build this out in the middle of the ocean or off the coast
proven
or
technology.
take up an insane amount of land. And the technology is only getting better. And it would get better if we actually incentivize people to go into that field and maybe lighten the regulatory load a little bit. But that's it. I mean, nuclear energy solves all of our problems, but the people who are most pro energy and pro the environment don't want to look at that.
I don't really get it.
It's fascinating, right? You would think someone who says we need to take care of the environment, we want to watch out what fuel sources we're using. You think this would be the thing that they latch onto and say, why are we not gung-ho on this?
And to be clear, there are some people who are super like climate change is a very huge problem who do say, hey, nuclear energy is awesome.
Vocal minority, though.
Yeah, they are.
They're not waving that flag everywhere.
No, it is. But like I do follow some people on Twitter who are like pro-nuclear people, and they are basically saying what we're saying. The thing with about how much energy we can produce. The thing about the Humboldt County wind farm is that supposedly we have one of the windiest areas. That area 20 miles off sea is one of the windiest areas, and it can produce apparently some of the like most power per space that any place on earth can produce.
But we also have migratory whales.
We have whales. And
I'm not sure I'm ready to say fuck the whales yet. I do like whales.
maybe I was a little harsh.
No, I get I'm messing with you a little bit. But
Yeah.
my thing is, I think I look at the wind turbine industry that they're trying to build, and I think of it in the same way as the logging industry, that it's just going to be this boom and bust cycle that they're trying to get everybody on board with, and then the rug's going to get pulled out, and it's just going to implode our economy.
But why would the rug get pulled out?
Because I don't think it's not going to be as efficient as people think it is. It's not going to bring energy costs down. I think you can look at England, you can look at some of these other cities where these have been implemented. Energy prices don't go down.
How is England dealing with the issue of battery storage, or is it only feeding the grid when the turbines are spinning?
That's a good question. I don't know what their storage capacity looks like. I'm trying to remember the city that this was on too, but
yeah.
It's a good question. I don't know what their storage capacity was for that. I just know that the turbines were not generating the level of electricity that they thought, because they're not that efficient at turning wind into actual power. And people's energy prices went up because they switched their grid to this. There are a number, I don't know if it was Germany, there are other states where they have these giant wind farms and they're actually tearing them down to build coal plants because the energy is such a joke that they're actually reverting back.
Right.
I want to say it was Germany because I think I read it around the time of the Nord Stream pipeline blowing up. I think it's Germany. And so, I mean, you just have to, expand your horizon a little bit and look around at some of these other places that have implemented this technology, and you realize it's not what people are being sold on. Like, it's not, I don't think it's going to be what people think it is. And once that rug comes out, it's going to suck. As someone who I pay a decent amount in energy prices running this place.
Sure.
And so when I read the RCEA thing, I was just not surprised, but not excited about.
And you know what sucks about my story? Well, it's not really a story. I'm just putting up the clips. Basically, I don't have anybody saying exactly what we're saying because nobody really said it. I mean, there were commissioners that wanted to accept it, but even they were kind of like saying, well, we should accept it, but we should make sure we make it clear to the public that we're not pro-nuclear energy and this is just temporary.
But that's such a dumb statement to make. Why would you're on an energy board, why would you not be pro-nuclear energy?
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm pro-nuclear energy. I agree with you.
But see, they just don't. Either they don't know or they do know and they're just trying to placate their base, which either way is just not, you wouldn't want a person like that in a position of any power.
Yeah. And so let's finish up on the wind energy. There's basically three problems that we've identified. Problem number one is that it might not produce that much energy. Problem number two is when there is the busy days, we need a lot of batteries to store it, and we don't have those batteries. And number three, the batteries that do exist, the parts are made in China. Those are really big problems. The China component is enormous. Dude.
Well, what are they going to do with the turbines? Are they going to ship them out of here for those blades that are spent? Are they going to bury them in the forest a little inland? Is anybody even asking that question? Are we going to have a graveyard where up in Trinidad?
And to be clear, these turbines, the blades are not these, cute little turbines. They're basically like 100 yards long.
Yeah, they're
these enormous,
they're massive.
Yeah.
And they're just burying them.
And so what the fishermen, part of what they're saying, if one of these turbines flips over and gets unmoored from its anchor, it's taking everything with it as it flows through the sea. It's going to take down all the other turbines. It's going to create this mass chain of events of a beast of a machine that's flowing through the sea. It's pretty crazy imagery.
Would they sink or would they float? Do they know?
Well, they're on these pontoons, right? Because the turbine is on the floaty.
But if it capsizes,
but if it tipped over, I suppose that I don't know. I don't know the physics of that. I can't say. But even if it was on the surface, there would probably be a portion that was submerged that could catch the cables that are anchoring these subsequent turbines if they all became unmoored from the floor of the sea. I mean, this is crazy stuff. And that's what the fishermen they're saying. We need detailed scientific engineering reports that explain what's going to happen if one of these things flips over.
Well, what happens to the ecosystem at the bottom of the ocean there where they're attaching these things?
So there is some research on this saying that it doesn't do much damage, but that's where Schellenberger comes in. Now, he was talking about the sounds that they make when they're exploring as opposed to when the turbines are running. But there's probably a whole new set of problems when the turbines are running.
That was my understanding, because I thought there was some speculation that was also causing a disruption with the whale's navigation ability.
Yeah.
Was the high decibel noise actually coming from the turbine spinning?
Maybe you might be right. It's been a while since I watched it, as I said.
Sounds to me like we don't have enough information, which is fascinating because they're essentially ramroding this project.
But we're getting these grants that are, I mean, what was the last grant? Like hundreds of millions of dollars to develop the port. Like a lot of money.
But see, if the people that are making these decisions are the same people that have the same level of education as the people who are on the RCEA board, it calls into question, well, do these people actually have a fundamental understanding of what they're making these decisions on? Or are they just in this green energy tailspin and are willing to go down any path as long as it fits with that one?
I don't know. And it's interesting because it's good because I can weave in all these things I'm working on right now. So my next thing is to post about this RCEA. There was also a meeting in August about the wind energy. It was about specifically the port development aspect of wind energy. because we have to upgrade our port massively to assemble these turbines. And one of the interesting question, just because it's very topical, I think people will be interested in this, is someone asked the person from the Harbor District, kind of like the expert staffer who was answering questions in a Q&A, well, what about if Republicans take over Congress? Republicans are not quite as interested in wind energy as Democrats. And I will have the quote up on my Instagram before the election, but I'm pretty sure. But the response was no. It's basically already there's just enough different things going on that it's already kind of a done deal. And even if Republicans who are unfriendly to wind power, it's not probably going to cancel our plans. I was like,
A lot of probablys in there.
Yeah, well, like I said, I'll check my Instagram, Arcata News, for the actual quote. But yeah, maybe I'll tag you since you seem to be interested in it. But yeah, I don't know. We're banking on this big time. I mean, the plans for the port are massive. They've got to totally rebuild this section. Basically, we're talking about the area. If you're going from Eureka to Manila, as you're going over the bridge, and before you get to Manila, to the left is the North Spit, basically Samoa, and then Fairhaven down further down. But right where you can see from the bridge, that you're going to see massive development of the port right there on your left side if you're traveling towards Manila. And that's going to be an area that is going to be super developed with supposedly tons and tons of jobs coming. Just forget about the ongoing, once wind energy is up and running, theoretically, just to develop that port is supposedly going to, the construction is going to involve massive amounts of jobs for Humboldt County. We shall see. You have the skeptical face on it.
Yeah, I just don't, I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced.
Right. I'm skeptical as well, which is why I'm calling it science fiction. Like I said, we develop technology all the time, so we might develop it, but we might not. It's not a guaranteed thing.
I'm not even not convinced that they wouldn't go through with it. I believe they will if they can. I'm just not convinced that this is going to benefit people in terms, even at a base level of decreasing energy prices. I'm not convinced of that at all.
Well, I'm not sure that the promise is that we're decreasing energy prices. The promise is that we're reducing carbon emissions. It's about climate change.
See, that's the spin that I'm worried about, is because then that's what's going to be used to justify, oh, well, now you're paying 60 cents per kilowatt instead of 40 cents.
It is going to be used to justify that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because, at least it's not nuclear.
Right.
We don't have to worry about using bad energy. And we have the decommissioned power plant here. It's like, what would that look like if we got that thing back up and running? Has anybody looked into that? So I know about the fault line issues and the earthquake fears, but...
So the fault line issue is the issue. I believe that's why the plant was shut down. And Diablo Canyon, to be clear, is also supposedly on a fault line. I am, again, unclear on exactly how dangerous that is and whether that was just used as a smokescreen to find like a reason to
shut them all down.
Yeah. I did for a story when I was reporting on wind energy. I never actually used anything I talked to this dude about. I forget, his name was Mark something. He's a big wind energy skeptic and nuclear promoter. And he said even though I don't know where he lives, somewhere else in the United States, he knew about the shutting down of he started talking to me about it. And he said the fault line issue is bullshit, that it was a smokescreen for people who don't like nuclear. I don't have more information. I don't know if the fault line issue is actually warrants shutting down a plant. That's unclear to me. I've never really looked into it.
What was the name of that guy?
Mark something. I could probably find it.
There was a guy I found a long time ago, maybe back towards the beginning of the podcast. And I don't know if he worked at the power plant or was involved somewhere in the chain. And he was kind of like a whistleblower. I can't remember the exact context, but he was speaking out against it, that we shouldn't have shut it down. And I think he wrote like this one, ours. And I think he wrote some short pamphlet or a short book and tried to get it I gotta dig back into that. But I mean, what containment systems do we have currently available to us? Would it be feasible to get that thing back up and running? And could we make it so that even if there was an earthquake, it would all be contained?
I have no idea.
I mean, what would the power look like through that? But instead of recommissioning a facility we currently have, we're going to invest hundreds of millions of dollars into building completely new infrastructure for an untested idea that is maybe only going to work in the sense that we're now using wind power, that we're on some green energy kick.
I don't know. I mean, these logistic things that we have in front of us, I mean, the China thing kills me because, like,
yeah, do we have any wind turbine suppliers that are in the States?
I think I think we have people who make wind turbines, but I don't think we have people that make all the parts we need for the batteries for storage, right? It's the batteries, because to be clear, what happens is some days the wind blows like crazy and then it's producing massive amounts of power, and you need to charge the batteries so that when there's no wind, you can then disseminate the power that blew the wind that blew yesterday. That's like the holy grail, and the parts for those batteries are being made, as I understand it, exclusively in China, which I believe someone asked about in this same meeting. So when I get to posting my Instagram videos, I'll try to find that as well, because these are the key issues. And people are on top of their shit. That's good, because you got a lot of people at these meetings. It's not just people demonizing nuclear. Like, there are people at this other meeting, at this wind energy meeting that I went to, people were very skeptical. So they asked some good questions, the same questions I had. I didn't have to ask anything because people were getting to my questions.
I think the only benefit and the reason why people are skeptical of this is because of the environmental impact. I think that's the only reason that there's pushback.
You think so?
Absolutely. I think otherwise everyone would be all for it.
Maybe. I mean, we're getting these huge grants from the state and federal governments. I mean, I'm like, hey, that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money
for little Humboldt County,
A lot of money, and it comes with the promise of jobs and of a booming economy. But I mean, we had that with lumber. We were sold that with marijuana, and now we're being sold that with wind energy.
Correct.
And the other two didn't pan out. The other two didn't make it.
They lasted for a while. I mean,
cannabis could come back if the state and the Board of Soups kind of stop jerking them around. But
yeah,
I don't know. Wind energy is, I have a bad feeling about what would happen here if they push that thing through.
Were you following the debate over the land-based wind that happened like 5 years ago when they were considering?
I had heard about it. I wasn't following it that closely. I wasn't really that invested.
Yeah. It was quite a big community debate. You were living, you were away off
abroad
school.
still, yeah.
Yeah.
I only came back around 2020 when I started the podcast, is when I was actually paying attention again what was going on here.
Right. Essentially, there was this company that wanted to build a normal land-based wind farm on a hill above Rio Del. And they were like, they do this. This is not like new technology. This is existing technology that works, right? We know there's wind farms on land. And so they found this spot in the hills above Rio Del. And, they did all these pre-work and surveys, and they found that that's like the windiest spot. That's the place where all the logistics are in place, where they can buy property, a willing seller, et cetera, et cetera. And basically, in the final months before it got to the Board of Supervisors, Native Americans said, well, wait, that's a sacred place for us. And so that really, in my view, this is my opinion, this is not fact, I'm just telling you how I perceive it, that's really what swung the vote. The Board of Supervisors rejected this project 3-2. So if one supervisor had changed his mind, it would have passed. Basically what happened, the supervisor that represents Rio Del, so she had in her district people demonstrating against this project, because there was the wind farm was going to be basically overlooking the town. You were going to be able to see these huge turbines, right? As they, Rio Del's kind of a nice place. It's surrounded by the river. It's in, it's mountains.
Scenic.
Yeah, it's scenic. And they were extremely angry, and there were these demonstrations in the months leading up to the supervisor's vote. And that year she was up for re-election, Estelle Fennell. And generally she was in the coalition of people that would be expected to support it, just her politics. But she voted against it. And that was somewhat surprising. And that's how it got defeated. But she lost her election anyway. She was replaced anyway. And the thing is that this sacred site, the Wiyot said, hey, that's a sacred site for us. How could you do this to us? The property owner, who was willing to sell to the wind developers, said, I've never been contacted by Native Americans who want to prey on my property. This is the first I'm hearing about this, and I've had this property in my family the whole time. Like, what? Now, the counter argument to that, I mean, this gets into a lot of different things, but basically the counter argument to that is that Native Americans don't like to reveal where their spots are, because then looters will come and try to dig out like remains and stuff, like in artifacts, and try to like sell them. Which I suppose is true. But from my perspective, I supported that project big time. I mean, that was going to be, we talk about jobs, that was going to be jobs. It was going to be clean energy. I mean, to me, it was a win-win. And Native Americans at the last second saying, okay, it's a sacred spot to you and you pray there, but you have no right to be there because it's private property. And if you're going there right now and praying there, you're trespassing because you've never told this guy that this is some sort of sacred property. He was testifying in public saying, I never heard of this. I never heard of this. This is news to me. So it was pretty crazy. And so when they had the Board of Supervisors vote, normally the Board of Supervisors, they meet in the courthouse, but there was so much interest that the vote was in I always confuse the Adorney Center and the Wharfinger building. It was at the Wharfinger building. So, I mean, there were hundreds of people there. It was super dramatic. And it was rejected by a 3-2 vote, with Estelle Fennell being on this, surprising us by voting against it. And that's why we don't have land-based wind in Humboldt County. Pretty incredible.
Why do you think that the Native Americans would want to go against that? If you didn't buy the story that it was sacred land.
Well, to be clear, when I'm not necessarily saying I don't buy the story. There probably is some connection. Native Americans used to live everywhere and have all the land. So all the land is sacred, right? Like it's hard for me to relate to, what does it mean to say that it's sacred? Like and if we had someone here from a tribe, perhaps they would explain this to me. I mean, I'm willing to listen, but like, this reminds me of when I traveled in India, right? Like when I traveled in India, it's like you'll go to a tourist town and they'll be like, "Ooh, a very famous person in Islam, a sheikh, is buried here," and you'll be like, "Oh, that's interesting." You'll go to his tomb. It's built up. It's nice. It's very nice. But then you realize like there's like thousands of these dudes. Every fucking place has a sheikh that was buried there. Has an imam. Oh, this guy was amazing in 1364, and he taught us this and that. It's like there's like thousands of these dudes. You can't like be treating any one of them as super special. It's not that interesting. You go to one tomb, you've pretty much seen them all. You go to the next one, it's the same thing, right? And like, so it's constantly this issue of, oh, that's a sacred site to us. All right, show me every sacred site you have. Like half of Humboldt County is like sacred sites, is my perception. So, I mean, and like this guy said, if Native Americans were coming up there to pray, wouldn't he have at some point had like a confrontation and like,
or seen somebody,
and at some point be like, "Hey, what are you doing? Hey, get out of here! You're on my property." And then being like, "Well, this is kind of sacred to us. This is why we're here. We're not trying to disturb you. We're just praying, whatever, this and that." But he never had that. So I'm not saying they don't have a connection to that place. They do. They were here for thousands and thousands of years, having connections to all the land around here. It's just that how much should we weigh that compared to the fact that our civilization needs energy? And I'm just very hung up on this thing that we need energy, because energy is literally what separates us from living in caves. It's a huge deal. And so I'm just not that sympathetic. My attitude is basically, okay, guys, you've got all these sacred sites. We're using one of them. Use the other 999 sacred sites that you have to pray. That's what I would say. That's my response.
Yeah, I didn't follow that story as it was going down. Would have been interesting to see how that panned out if they had built it. What that did for energy prices.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing about jobs is to me huge that guys would have jobs. I mean,
jobs are big, but I always fall back on, okay, what's the tangible aspect for people's bottom line?
Yeah.
Here? Like, are we making energy cheaper for them, or are we making it more expensive?
Mhm.
Let's not do the more expensive. Like, cheaper energy is a good thing. Cheaper energy raises people out of poverty. So let's focus on making energy less expensive rather than doing all these convoluted things to try to make ourselves feel better and make it more expensive.
I don't know that wind energy is ever going to make energy cheaper.
That's my problem.
Can it ever? So. I don't think so either.
I don't think so. I think you'd have a better argument with solar and like Musk's push for like those Tesla solar panels on top of houses, you know? Have you seen those?
No.
Solar panel tiles, so you don't need shingles. You would just essentially roof it in these, they're like little, I think they're smaller than normal shingles. And they're like
the actual roof would be made.
Would be solar panel.
Okay.
And then you'd have like one of his little wall mount power boxes. I would buy into that way more than I would buy into wind energy. But people just, they think, oh, it's green. This is good for the environment.
How is Elon doing as far as battery storage and developing that technology?
Supposedly
he is
pretty well.
Talking about it. So
there's some spin-off. I don't think it's actually a spin-off. I think it's part of Tesla where they build power banks. And supposedly, I mean, I haven't checked their balance sheet, but supposedly they're doing pretty well. And you'd have to think the guy that's making battery-powered cars, who is incentivized to have efficient battery storage, would be capable of solving that problem and building a pretty damn good battery.
Yeah.
But then again, those battery, I don't know how long a Tesla battery lasts.
Yeah, I don't know either.
What's the degradation look like on that?
Right.
I have an iPhone 10. I charge that thing 3-4 times a day. The battery's a joke. Is that going to be your car in 5 years? Are you going to be...
Well, but that's because your phone is old. It's a 10. You've probably had it a few years.
True.
Yeah. It grades
True,
over
but what
time.
happens if you have a Model X that you got in 2020? What happens when 2030 comes around?
Right.
How far are you getting on that charge now?
That's a good point. I never thought about that.
That's my only concern with battery-powered cars right now, is what does the degradation look like? You know, you have a gas-powered car, you're still getting that mileage. As long as the engine's running, as long as nothing breaks down, you can still drive the car.
I heard someone saying, and this might just be like bullshit social media, like saying absolute bullshit, but someone was saying that like Apple specifically designs their phones such that your battery, as the phone gets older, you need to charge it more frequently and it runs down more quickly. This way you'll update your phone and get a new phone. You think that's legit?
I think there was a lawsuit about that.
Yeah.
And I think they tried to spin it off that they were not necessarily degrading people's batteries, but running them down for some energy consumption per. I don't remember, but I think there was a lawsuit about that. I think they lost that.
Okay.
I do remember hearing something about that. Yeah, which would make sense. You're building phones. You want people to buy the newest phone.
You definitely do.
Your phone sales aren't doing great, so let's just sink people's batteries, make them get a new one.
Yeah. Dude, I got an iPhone 8 and it
You're right there with me.
Yeah, I got to charge it a lot.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
You take it for granted that 1 day charge that it'd be fine. You go like day and a half.
And so I got the cable that is the super high speed charger instead of the regular USB. It's like a different attachment or a different, plug-in or whatever. And but even with that, I mean, it's super annoying. Like I'll say, oh, I'm good with my phone. Then I'll look at my phone. It's like on 27%. I'll be like, no, I'm not good with my phone.
You know, it's bad when you're just constantly in low power mode.
Right.
You just always have that on.
Right.
Like it's 100%. But if I don't turn that on, it's going to be 5% here in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
My charging port on that thing has started going out. So now I use a wireless charger to cheat the system. And once that starts going, I'm going to have to get a new one.
I actually don't use my phone that much. I'm very conscious of like when I'm out and about, like if I have like a free second where I'm not engaged in something, I don't necessarily whip out my phone. I make it a point to sit outside on a bench and just chill and like look at the bay or look at people walking by or look at the street. Like I don't I try not to be on my, not because of charging, just because of general not being looking at a screen my whole life and actually living in the world, you know? So
yeah, I have a hard time with that.
yeah, everybody does.
Yeah. I can do it if I have a book. If I have a book with me, that'll be my counterbalance. But otherwise, it's the phone.
What are you usually doing on your phone? Like what do you usually open it up to?
Usually right now it's probably been scrolling X the most. Scrolling X. Usually it's looking for guests. Like I'll be out waiting for an appointment or doing something, and I'll just be scrolling, trying to see, okay, who can I get on next? What's the next interesting idea? Who do I want to talk to? Or responding to emails. I was addicted during 2020. I was addicted to my email because, I'm reaching out to people. So it got to the point where I would just be refreshing my email throughout the day, trying to, okay, I got to respond to this email now. I got to do this one. And I've kind of slipped back into that. I haven't found the happy medium yet.
You're getting into like, you're getting into these like super biotech guests, like storing brains and putting them in other people and taking their spirit and making them live for that one. I know you just did another one. I haven't watched the recent one. I just looked at your description of it, but the one that was like a few months ago. Yeah, I mean, I think as I understand it, he was putting brains in new people or something. What the fuck?
They're storing people essentially. And are you talking about the cryo guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Life extension.
Yeah.
So they're putting people, you could do a whole body or just your brain, and they put you in this tank and essentially are storing you in the hopes that someday they'll be able to bring you back.
Right. Dude.
Pretty crazy stuff, right? Pretty crazy.
Oh, shit, dude. Yeah. Very crazy stuff. Yeah, and then last time I came on her, you're just very casually like, yeah, hey, would you have an AI girlfriend? As this is like a normal conversation. I remember I was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Those are the things I think about.
I'm like, dude, what are you talking about, man? That was funny.
That's what I do. 90%, I would say probably more than 90% of my day is just thinking about random shit like that. Because all I do is work labor jobs, so they don't take a lot of mental focus. You're essentially a robot doing a job. And so all you have to do is just think about random shit.
But when you say you scroll Twitter for guests, like, okay, the thing about Twitter is that it's not a good way to interact with local people. Like Twitter is very much like a national, international thing. It's different than like Instagram where you can like follow. No, that's me.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if that was my phone.
Yeah, sorry. I'll turn.
No worries.
So like, I mean, are you finding guests on Twitter? I mean, that's hard.
Yes.
Your national guests on Twitter.
Yes. Local is Facebook. Yeah. Facebook's a little better for local news articles. Facebook events. It's a good way to find people. It's kind of hard to find people locally.
Yeah.
Unless you find one guest and then you can find a guest through that guest, through like their Instagram. You see they're doing something with this other person, then you go down a rabbit hole looking into that person. That's one of the harder parts, is just finding people that you would want to have a conversation with and then getting them on the podcast.
On that note, if I can recommend one person to you, there's this guy, Fred Weiss in Arcata, who has Arcata One. Do you know him?
Arcata One.
Arcata1.com. So he's basically kind of like a Kent Sawatsky type.
Okay.
But only for Arcata, in that he's like a city hall watchdog. But unlike Kent, he produces a website with massive amounts of analysis, commentary, and reporting on Arcata City Hall. And it's very impressive. Now, to be clear, I was following him and interacting with him a lot when I was reporting on the Gateway, which was a plan to, and they have subsequently done it, rezone a lot of downtown Arcata, which you might have heard about. He basically started his site to kind of be a watchdog because he objected to the way the city was doing it. But his website is incredibly impressive. The depth and he's just very rigorous. And like Kent, he will just talk. He's very like folksy. So he'll just talk and talk and talk. You don't really need to do that much research to like talk to him.
To get him going.
Because he's just going to talk and talk and talk. And he's very like nice and friendly. So he's one person that I can think of.
Check him out.
Yeah.
Arcata One.
Arcata1.com. Yeah.
I'll look into him.
Yeah. sometimes I think of like, okay, well, if I go on Nick, who should I recommend? But then I also don't know exactly who you're going to be into, and
it's hard to gauge.
Yeah.
I've had people recommend guests, and I've brought them on, and it's been great. And I've had people recommend guests, and I brought them on, and it was a freaking implosion.
Dude, that's why I don't like. How do you? Like, if you haven't met the person, how do you know about personality? When you brought me on for the first time, you sent me an email. I said, I'll show up. You'd never talk to me. Like, how do you know ahead of time, or do you just take that chance?
You just take the chance. That's one of the hard things about doing this is like I would imagine if you're a musician, and this is what I relate to a lot when I think about this, you get to create your songs in solitude in some sense. People aren't watching you write this song. They're not hearing the thousands of versions where it sucked. They're hearing the one finished version that you put out on your album. And it's kind of beautiful that way because you just get the finished product. It doesn't dilute any of your work because you're only ever putting out what you deem is your best work. People might not resonate with it or like it, but you feel that this is your best work and this is what you're putting out. One of the hard parts of doing this is I might put out a great episode in my head, and then next week I'm putting out a bad one because we did the podcast, we recorded it. I'm not going to not put it out because I think it sucks. So now you're seeing great episodes and you're also seeing bad episodes. And I don't know what that looks like for a listener. I don't know who listens. So it's like, I don't know what that translates to. Are you thinking, oh shit, this sucks. We had 5 bad ones in a row. You don't get, like, I don't get to control the content in that way.
Okay, but when you say that you're going to put it out no matter what, is the reason for that you feel like, hey, I already invested some time. It's some content is better than nothing. It still helps the algorithm to a certain extent, so I might as well put it out. Or are you saying you have an obligation to the guest the guest gave you their time, you have to respect them by putting out the episode? Or is it a third reason?
It's I have an obligation to the integrity of the podcast and what I think the podcast means. And I think that if I were to start curating what I deem to be the best episodes and only putting those out, I'm being disingenuous to the audience. I think that the only way this works, and this is a long-term plan, so it could very well not pan out and not pan out because of this reason. But my thought is, if there's any longevity to this, it's through honesty and it's through putting out the good ones, the bad ones. That's why I don't cut anything. I mean, I've had, in the early days, I pulled episodes because people asked me to cut something. I was like, I can't cut it, but I'll just pull the episode. Now I don't even do that. Now, if we sit down and we record, it's out there. Whether you want it out there, whether I want it out there, sucker's going out. And that's been my motto. And I think it's just that honesty. This is just, and maybe that's a flawed line of thinking. We'll see how it pans out. But I think that will be foundational to what I want this to be, is people will be able to watch an episode and at least know, okay, this guy's not feeding me lines. Maybe. Or it'll implode and I'll be 65 sitting in here talking to myself, staring at a screen.
No, you're gonna be 65 talking at your huge podcast studio in Austin, dude, where you're at the center.
I had been thinking about that after we did that episode, the move thing. But yeah, that's another tangent. But yeah, no, I don't know. People are very keen on giving out advice in fields that they have no experience in. And one of the things I always hear from people is, oh, you should just pull the ones that you don't like. Like, don't put those out there. But that just doesn't feel like there's longevity in that to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure you feel that. I mean, have you done a bad video and thought, I don't want to put this out?
I've done videos that I think are better or worse. But normally it has to reach a certain threshold before I publish it. I've started working on videos and realized that they're not going anywhere and said, I'm done. I'm not doing this. And I've moved on for sure. That's happened.
But see, that's the beauty of that, is you can create, and if it doesn't meet your threshold, you don't even have to release it.
Now, I've also done interviews like with this dude, this energy guy who I did a Skype interview with, and this pro-nuclear guy. I talked to him, but it didn't really give me anything that I could use, and I don't promise to use. And I've talked to people, not used it, and had them get pissed at me. That like, hey, I gave
what happened? You didn't use my interview,
and it's kind of tough because the honest answer is
It sucked.
I don't think you said
Or
anything.
not, it sucked. I don't want to put words in.
No, the diplomatic way and the true way is I don't think you said anything insightful enough to really advance the story or interest the listener. But that's kind of a rough thing to say to somebody. So it's kind of becomes it's almost the same. It's almost the same thing as like when you're if a girl likes you and she's constantly like, you know, trying to like talk to you, and eventually you just want to say, hey, I'm just not interested. Like it's just
gotta let them down easy.
You know, yeah. I mean, and I've also been on the other end of that where I've been the one when I was young, I didn't get the message.
Much less fun.
Yeah, it sucks. It sucks. Yeah. So it's like when someone is really begging you to tell them that you're just not into them. It's tough, whether it's news reporting or dating or anything. But yeah, I don't have this kind of like long form live type thing where, you know, so like when I hear what you're saying, to me, it strikes me as I think I would just not put it out. Right. I'm just not in the situation of thinking philosophically about your whole project. You know, what you're doing here. It's a totally different thing than I've ever done. But to me, it's like the aspect of, well, what am I going to tell the guest when it doesn't, if the guest says, hey, where's the link? You said you would send it to me. And it's like, I don't know what and they came and they spent a couple hours and, you know, it's big. I don't know what I would do in that situation, you know?
It's kind of a catch-22.
Yeah.
Because one of the benefits of pulling the episodes would be you could curate in your mind what is really good content, and you'd have this really well thought out base, and people would be able to know if they're going to click on an episode, it's probably going to be a good one, or at least decent, because that's what you put out is decent episodes. Like if you're a YouTuber and you're making these videos and you're consistently good because you don't put out the bad ones, you build up that track record.
Well, but the thing is with your episodes, a lot of times what I think, like I've never really thought of it in terms of good or bad episodes. I've thought about it as far as guests that interest me or guests that don't. Like
engaging or not engaging.
Yeah, but the fact that I'm not interested in what someone's talking about doesn't necessarily mean it was like a bad episode. It's like subjective. It's like, what kind of music do you like? What kind of food do you like? Like there's no reason for it. It's just like different people like different things. So but yeah, when you're the actual host, right, you're in you can kind of like evaluate and say, yeah, I was hoping for this, but it didn't fulfill my expectations at all. I mean, I've always been, back in the day, I was working at a radio station. I was a board operator for a woman who had this food talk show. And, so she would bring on these kind of like people who were like chefs or like, you know, this was in Sonoma County. So a lot of people work in wine. They're like sommeliers and they have a vineyard, you know, they're growing grapes, they're selling wine, whatever. And so when I would talk to her about how she got her guests, she would be like, she wouldn't screen them for like talking to them the same way you do, right? She like you, she would not have long conversations with people. She would just bring them on. And I would say like, well, how do you know they're going to be interesting? Because the fact that someone's doing something interesting in the world is not proof that they're going to be interesting on a podcast. It's two different things. Some people cannot talk interestingly about the work that they do that actually is interesting.
Even if they're incredibly passionate about it.
Correct. And even if they're influential and they're doing good and they're making the world better, it doesn't mean that they're going to be interesting talker. And she basically just said, hey, that's my job. I got to bring it out of them. And I'm confident that when I come in, I'm going to make it interesting by talking to them. And so, you know, I'd be, you know, being her producer. Sometimes she didn't have to talk barely at all because the person could play the media game and could talk a lot. And sometimes she was talking for most of the episode, filling in the blanks, telling stories based on the half sentence that her guest came in, you know, and it would bomb basically. But she was good. She was a good talker. She would knew what to do. She would talk a lot if the guest was not talking enough. But I think that there's always that thing, you know, and you're in that situation big time.
Bombing?
No, of not knowing.
No, yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I mean, one of my hopes is if this gets bigger, when it gets bigger, is that some of that will just fall to the wayside. Because as the podcast gets bigger, you have access to more people. Presumably, those people have more backstory, and you can kind of filter a little bit easier. Right now, you're swinging from the hip.
But one of the things about bringing on bigger guests, and the thing is, this is about the art of the podcast. of podcasts in general. And I've because I'm just so interested in media and podcasting and videos and all this stuff, I've heard people talk about this. The art of podcasting is that some people say it's not about the quality of the guest. It's about your rapport with the guest. So the fact that you bring on your buddies from high school, they're saying that if you develop a good fan base, people want to see you bullshit with your buddies from high school, even though they are just normal people without any particular thing. Like you brought me on because I have a particular thing that I'm a news reporter, right? Your buddies, I'm sure they have their own lives, right? They're doing stuff, but they're just there to basically bullshit with you. And I've heard people say, who are very knowledgeable in this industry, saying that's what you should concentrate on if you have a built up fan base. So like I started watching the first 15 minutes of the most recent episode with your buddies. And like I said, I've been busier, so I didn't get to the whole thing. But like I'm a perfect example because I'm pretty loyal to you. I'll watch you just talk bullshit with your buddies, and you're talking nonsense. They're not there to talk about any specific topic. They're just bullshitting about the Olympics, trans athletes, and just whatever bullshit you guys are talking about. I'm like, oh, this is cool. I'll listen to this in the background while I make dinner. It's all good,
Yeah, that's a good point. There is a beauty to that. Yeah. And I would never not do those. I think the idea of it being easier to filter is that you just have a broader base, because a lot of the people that I do reach out to, there's no backstory on them. It's just, this is just a person who maybe did one thing, and you're like, oh, okay, what could we feed that into? And sometimes I've brought on people who haven't done anything in the sense that there's no online footprint that I can look into to get a backstory. And those have been great conversations. Sometimes they've been bad conversations. There's no, you don't have anything to read on them. You're just, okay, this is my first time meeting you. Let's do a podcast.
Right.
And I don't know. I'm absolutely still in the infancy of this, of trying to figure out what it all looks like.
Wow, that's amazing that you're still saying that, because you're a few years in. You're hundreds of episodes in.
Then you're 201.
Okay. It's a lot of conversations, dude.
Podcast. Yeah. A lot of hours.
Wow. It's a lot of podcasts.
Yeah, 200 podcasts. It's pretty crazy when you put it like that, right?
And starting out on the kitchen table, then going to the previous studio, and going in here, and making little tweaks at each of those stages. It's a lot of stuff.
Still just a baby. I didn't think I would, I think I've told this story on here, so I apologize for people that have listened to it, but when I first started out, I think I was unpacking all of the equipment. I had ordered it all at the same time, so I had a bunch of stuff show up at my parents' house, and I'm pulling it all out, setting it up on the pool table. At that time, we had a ping pong top on the pool table, and I'm putting everything up on there.
Classic, dude. Ping pong table on the pool.
Right?
It's killing it, bro.
Very college vibes.
Yeah.
And my dad is kind of watching me as I'm unpacking all this stuff. He's like, how are you going to make money off of this? And without skipping a beat, I looked at him and I said, I don't think I'll make any money for 5 years. And he looked at me like, my son is retarded. Where did I go wrong? But that was kind of the motto, was that it wasn't about the money. I was just a young, dumb kid with some semblance of a vision, or maybe not even a vision, maybe just too knuckleheaded to quit, and just kept going.
It's looking good, dude. I mean, this monitor,
pretty crazy.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen here. Yeah, bringing stuff up, and then the guest is able to look at it, and it's in the video, and you don't have to put it in post-production. It's in live. I mean, when you download the video, it's going to be, when you recover what you've recorded, it's going to be in there already. There's
a piece of equipment that I want to get that will make that happen. Right now, if I were to do it, I would have to add it in post. But there are restrictions with YouTube videos and stuff where you can only show maybe 10 seconds and then it's copyrighted.
10 seconds of a video?
Of a video. I believe. YouTube's very stringent with their copyright stuff. So maybe we would just play a couple seconds and then I would pull it, but we'd still be watching it and the audience would only see a few seconds of it.
But you're assuming that what we're watching is another YouTube video. If it's like
if it's just an article, we can put that in there.
Right.
I don't think there's copyright on that.
Right.
But if it's a video, I have to look into the copyright laws for stuff like that.
But dude, people make reaction videos to other YouTubers all the time without permission from the YouTuber that they're reaction.
It's a weird thing. I have heard of podcasters getting copyright strikes on YouTube for that. But then you're right, there are reaction pages where that's all they do.
That's all they do.
Yeah. There's a weird fair use law where if you're repurposing somebody's stuff but you're adding value, whatever that means,
Correct.
then you're safe.
And that question of whether you've added value is subjective. I've heard of this before. Fair use, and exactly. You have to add value.
That's another thing. I'm hoping when I've been watching this piece of tech, and my hope is to get that and then bring back the live streams again. So they'll be streamed live, and then I'm hoping my production workflow will be faster, that I'll be able to live stream it and then have it out finished the next day. So my turnaround time will be significantly shorter.
When you say finished, you mean the live thing goes live and the next day the edited version goes up?
Yeah, so like we're recording right now, this would be live, and then tomorrow the finished product would be out.
What is the advantage of going live other than the algorithm liking
the
you?
algorithm?
The algorithm likes you.
And I think there's a cool, I go back and forth. There's a cool dynamic where people can listen live, and I think that adds some value. Maybe if you're just at your house and you're like, oh shit, the live stream's up, you watch that. The algorithm obviously does favor those and show them to new people. It's more so the turnover time. The algorithm and the turnover time.
Okay.
Turnover is my biggest one. I'd like to be doing 3 of these a week. That's when I'll start to hit my stride. Or at least I look at this in phases of evolution, and I think the next evolution for this will come by producing more. I think that'll be 3 episodes a week.
But if you're going to be getting that many guests, that means you're going to be doing Zoom like a mother. You're going to be on Zoom all the time because you're not going to be doing 3 local guests a week.
3 local, it's achievable. It's achievable. I've got 2 local this week.
Okay.
It will probably be more Zoom to fill the gaps, but I don't think 3 is crazy. And there's a certain stride. You have to do this a lot to hit a stride, I've noticed, because I've done multiple in a week and then taken 2 weeks off trying to edit those, and then you feel like you're on the back foot trying to catch up again for the next one. You just need to do them consistently. My problem is the post-production work takes forever, and then I can only produce so many because I don't want to record, like I recorded a bunch, like 7 maybe, prior to September, and then I've just been editing up till now. So I basically didn't record. I think I recorded 1 in the month of September, which is not great. But I had a ton I had to edit through the backlog.
Well, that's good that you are diligent. Part of the problem in video production, because this is also a video in addition to being a podcast, in video production, I talk about this all the time. People shoot video all the time that they don't do anything with. It's just shooting. It's like, what are you doing? Like,
just
stop shooting
footage.
Yeah. It's like, I'm sure your SD card looks awesome, bro.
Yeah.
Can I borrow it and just watch the raw footage? Like, it's ridiculous. So that's good that you were like, okay, I'm not, apparently you were not booking guests because, I got 7 videos. I got to get my shit together and catch up before I get another one. That's good.
Yeah. It doesn't do any good to have 15 podcasts that aren't released.
Yeah.
Got to put them out there.
Yeah. It's just that for me, for my viewing experience, the Zoom thing, it is really not as great an experience. For people listening, it's probably closer to the thing because, okay, you're still on the mic, you still have your good sound quality. The difference between the Zoom mic and this mic is a little bit, but it's not that big a deal. But whereas for the watching experience and, as opposed to seeing this nice studio, I see that you guys are actually talking to each other. When I'm watching on YouTube and you guys are on Zoom, it's just you guys are talking over a computer, and it does to me affect how much I enjoy things.
I agree.
You agree?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's why, I keep saying next year, but it'll probably be it'll have to be next year. This will have to move to a bigger market because we're not a big enough city to fund what I would like this to be. You need more people. Because in studio is the best. Like, look at us. We got some whiskey. We're here in front of each other. It's just a different dynamic when it's over a computer screen. Just not quite there.
Do you have a base of someone or people in another city where you're like, hey, I've got this buddy and he's got an extra room, or, you know, I've got a buddy with some extra warehouse space, anything like that?
No, but I thought about saving up some scratch and just renting like a warehouse in another city and going out there for like a month or 2 months, however long I could float it, and just recording a bunch of episodes, setting up like a makeshift studio, kind of like this, record for a month or two, and then come back.
Wow.
In the interim, I thought I'll go maybe to Medford or Reading, somewhere reasonably close by that's still a bigger market, and doing that. I thought about doing Reading this summer, but I didn't have the cash on hand to be able to float that.
But like these national guests, it's not like they're kicking it in Medford and Reading. You got to get to like the Bay or Portland or LA. You got to get to like...
Yeah. Difference is those to rent a warehouse out there would be
crazy.
More. Yeah. A studio flat, you know, like what this is, but
I just don't see how like Reading and Medford gives you access to this whole new round of guests.
It just has more. There are more people in Reading and Medford. They're bigger cities.
Right.
So there would be more people to pull from.
Okay.
Wouldn't necessarily be the caliber of guests, I guess, if you wanted to frame it like that. Wouldn't necessarily change. There would just be more.
But you'd have to do the research to figure out who are the interesting people.
Oh yeah, I'd have to like prior. So it would be like a 3-month stage. Month 1 would be just lining up guests. And then month 2 and 3 would be out there just every day.
Blasting through it.
Just recording.
And then coming home with a bunch of SD cards and then...
No, I would be out there cranking them out. I would be trying to do them very fast turnover. I would not want to come through and sift through.
Okay.
You know, because if I did that, I would shoot for a podcast a day, if not 2 podcasts a day. It'd be like, I'd go to the gym, do podcasts. Because I wouldn't be able to find a job for 2 months out there.
Right.
So it'd just be floating on savings, recording, and coming back. But you're right. It would be better to do that in like a market that has solid qualities for what I'm looking for, like a San Francisco would be our closest one. Because Portland seems a little... So does San Francisco. San Francisco's a little sketchy too. But it needs to... It's definitely on my radar.
Yeah.
There's no longevity for my direction in this up here, unfortunately. I mean, it is nice to have the option of doing Zoom ones, because then you can get those different guests on, you know?
Yeah.
But it's too small of a market.
Yeah, it was, you know, this is kind of like similar to the story that Juice told you on the pod, which was quite amazing what he was saying about how he went down to LA during
Lived
COVID.
out of his car.
And just, I'm like,
crazy.
What a fucking hustler. This dude is a fucking baller. I mean, I never heard of him before he came on your pod. Just a little bit.
This is good whiskey, man.
It's pretty good whiskey, yeah. I'm a lightweight. I got it. That's good.
Oh, that's good.
Bro.
Just sorry. We got time here, man.
Chill, bro. Just chill. Relax.
We'll save it for the next one. We'll get cigars.
Yeah. I'm a lightweight, man. I
am too. I don't drink. I feel like it makes it look like I'm an alcoholic sometimes, because I'll only really drink on the podcast. I'll have a beer or two.
Right.
But I don't really drink outside of that.
You're usually drinking beer on the podcast.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Whiskey is more fun. Whiskey is really the only hard alcohol that I like. Like every other alcohol, I feel like is just like to get fucked up.
Yeah.
Like you drinking tequila, it's like, what? You're just trying to rage. Like
I'll sip on, vodka is still vodka. You're trying to get fucked up on vodka.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whiskey is the only one where whiskey is like the beer of
correct
hard alcohol.
Correct.
Where you can
just sip it,
sit back,
chill,
have one.
Yep.
I felt like I had been thinking about this. I felt like such a bitch after we got off the last one where I had talked about Austin and how I didn't want to move there because I don't remember exactly what I said, but I just remember the feeling of it where it was like, I don't want to go there because there's a bunch of big fish there. And then I was listening back to that. I was like, oh, that's such a sad way of thinking. I don't remember how I phrased it.
Well, I understood it to be strategic. I mean, wow, okay. No, go ahead. I'll let you.
No, I think it was more, I would rather be a small fish around bigger fish and have that hustle mentality of trying to climb your way up. And I think Austin, I thought about moving to Austin. That was one of the cities it's definitely the podcast hub now. Everybody's out there. But there is something around, you know, being a small fish around big fish. There's a dichotomy there. But I think it's good. You have to be around killers if you want to be a killer. You don't get good around people that suck. Like if you're playing sports and everyone around you is terrible, you're not going to get any better. You have to go where the competition is and sharpen your sword. No, you don't think so?
No, you're dropping knowledge. You're dropping bars, dude. Just keep going, man. Yeah. Hell yeah. No, I mean that's true. You do have to be around other good artists to get better at whatever you're trying to produce. That's true of guitar, playing basketball, podcasting, whatever you're trying to do.
Anything.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's for sure that you're at a disadvantage, that any national figure is never going to be in town here. And like I said about the Zoom thing, it's not quite as good. When I was really interested, I watched it. I watched your conversations about Israel-Palestine because I knew I was going to come in and talk about it, and I wanted to see what you were doing. The cryogenic guy was really interesting.
Well, and the audio on that one was terrible.
Was it? I don't remember that.
Oh, that's good then. I'm glad.
I might have thought that then, but I don't remember that.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. It was my fault. There was hardware issues, but yeah, it was pretty.
Okay, so when you're doing Zoom, do you say, okay, explain to me what your audio situation is going to be? Do you go through their tech things or no?
No, the only thing I ask is that they wear headphones, if they have headphones, because that makes it easier for me to edit the audio. If they're going through speakers, there's my voice bleeding in through their mic. So I have to try to edit that out as best as I can. If they wear headphones, we're pretty much okay on that end.
But you let them, if all they have is the computer on mic, you'll let them do it with that?
Yep.
Okay.
I thought about buying a microphone and then shipping it out, like overnighting it the day before to the guests, but that just seems like a lot of hassle.
Even if you do that, there's going to be issues with connecting it.
Yeah, if they don't know how to use it, or if they don't have a port for it. I've had guys that don't have ports for mics, headset mics. People have used those. They're just rolling. That's the problem, is I have all of the tech, but if you're doing a remote one like that, it doesn't do you any good.
Now, if you're getting into bigger guests are used to going on podcasts. They have their ring light, they have their mic, they've got their whole media set up because people.
I had a guy that had a full-on backdrop. I think he was in his house.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
When you say backdrop, what do you mean? Like a
I don't know if it was just a green screen or an actual image that he had, blown up and printed out on some canvas, but it was a full city landscape behind him. I think he was just in his house. I don't know if that might have been in his office, but he does a lot of media interviews, so it's understandable that he has that.
Totally. Yeah, the Zoom thing is
it's got its pros and cons.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no comparison to in person, but at my stage, it is definitely beneficial to have that as an option.
Okay.
Just got to roll with the punches.
Well, you're doing a good job. I mean, I'm still watching a lot of episodes, and I watched some of Tyler Parr. He was talking about. I mean, this dude's like running a gym and then like casually talking about like crazy crimes that he's been involved in.
Dude's lived a crazy life.
I'm like, what the fuck? Like, he's just like casual. I forget what the specific crime that he mentioned. I'm just like. Because, he's talking, he's normal, he's running a gym, already school, whatever. And then he's just like getting into like crazy shit. And I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
I'm like rewinding. Did I hear that correctly? Like, what is going on?
He did an interview with James Carey, who does this I'm Still Here company. It's like a clothing company, but it's a brand as well. And he did an interview with him. That's actually how I found him. And his backstory is just
outrageous.
Insane. Oh, yeah. Insane. Stuff the guy's lived through. And done, and what he's been a part of, and then to go build out this gym, and then to get raided by the drug task force for steroids.
Oh, I didn't get to that.
Oh yeah, part. Oh yeah, crazy. That was fairly recent. I think that was earlier this year, maybe early last year.
So he talked about it on the pod?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, we brought it up. I don't remember when he was on. That was this year, I think. So maybe January of this year. He was rated, yeah.
Wow.
Crazy.
But then, like, I'm like trying to figure out, like, he's telling these stories. I'm like, how did this guy find time to like get ripped and get super into like physical fitness when you're like living such a like unhealthy, like emotionally insane life? Like, I can barely get healthy and I have like no craziness in my life. You know what I mean?
I bet if you were juicing a little bit, you'd be there taking a little TRT.
Okay.
We could get you jacked.
So what happened with the raid? I mean, was he busted with a bunch of steroids?
I would have to go back and read the article. I believe his stance was that he was rated, he had a little bit of personal use testosterone. And he was saying that the DA basically, they haven't pressed charges on him, which would cause me to believe his side of the story, that it wasn't it was recreational, it wasn't distributive. He wasn't selling these drugs to people. That being said, I think the articles framed it a little differently, and who knows?
This is local media report?
Yeah.
Okay,
I think their Loco might have covered it, I believe. But they rated him, So that's one of those things you kind of just have to wait and see what happens. You know? But yeah, I mean, he's very open about his life, going to jail, doing all this stuff. I think he went to jail. I might have just made that up.
I don't remember exactly what he said, but yeah, I think
regardless, crazy life. Went to like a camp, got sent to a camp down in Mexico and essentially broke out of it and escaped. Managed to work his way back up. Crazy, just crazy. I don't want to retell it because I wouldn't do it justice, but crazy life and very open about everything. Yeah. I think maybe I'd be a little more hesitant about saying stuff, but there's value in being honest like that.
Yeah, no, he was telling you stories on the podcast, and I was just like, holy shit.
It is amazing when you meet somebody for the first time and then they're just honest about everything. Because normally in your day-to-day life, people are a little more reserved.
Well, he also might have this sense that he's trying to be interesting on the pod. And so, hey, here's some interesting stories. It worked. I was like, what is this?
And there's you get in here and, the microphones kind of fade away and you loosen up a little bit.
Right. You drink some whiskey.
People just start talking. Yeah, we didn't even drink that episode. We just got going.
Yeah. He's good about liking my Instagram posts. So
there you go.
I'm a fan. Anybody who's
Shout
a fan of me I'm a fan of them. So he always likes my Instagram posts. So yeah, I'm like, all right, this guy's cool.
He's got a 24-hour gym.
Right.
Pretty sweet. I haven't seen it. I've seen his posts on Instagram. But I'm a supporter of 24-hour gyms.
That is pretty cool. Where's his spot at? He said he had the Henderson Center spot, but that's the one that crashed with his buddy.
It gets down on, where the old CrossFit was down on Broadway.
Right, that's what you guys were talking about. Yeah, the old CrossFit. Yeah. So it's right past the Bayshore Mall.
Yeah.
It's as if you're headed to like CR. Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. Right. Cool.
You think you're going to stay around here?
This summer I was entertaining moving out of the area because I was going through I'm to a certain extent, I'm still in it. I'm making very little money. I'm basically living off my life savings right now. I mean, I'm working a little bit. And so I have one part-time job that's very part-time. And other than that, I'm just picking stuff up. So I have very little work right now. I have depleted a lot of my savings. I still have a little bit left to go, but it can't last forever. I have a job interview tomorrow morning to be the backup DJ, the substitute DJ at a group of radio stations at Lost Coast Communications. So that's The Point, the Lounge, K-Slug, and K-Hum to basically be their backup guy, which I think is a pretty good job for me.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
It's interesting. So that's tomorrow morning. So whatever. So why did I bring this up? You're asking me whether I'm going to move out of here. So at some point I was like saying, hey, I need to basically start to look for work out of the area. And I was looking on Craigslist. The problem is that it's really hard to find work out of like when you don't know anybody and you're basically just a resume that comes in with the other 80 resumes. Are you really going to get hired in that situation? Some people do get jobs that way, but it's really hard.
You got to send out a lot of emails.
You got to send
tons of resumes. Job applications.
Yeah, you got to just be on it all the time. And I really like Humboldt County. And I never know whether it's the fact that there's not that much work around here and we all deal with this, which everybody deals with this, or whether I'm just not focused enough and I don't know what kind of work I want to do. I'm not sure which is the problem, right? Because wherever you go, you take your same problems that relate to you take them with you. So moving doesn't solve your problems if the problem was you in the first place. So I don't know whether moving is a good idea. Now, I really like Humboldt County. So moving I'd lose kind of like the stuff I have here. Now, I don't have a family. I have some friends, but I could, I'd be fine not seeing, moving away. They're great people, but I would survive. I have my juggling community. So I'm a juggler, and that is really fun, and I'm getting much better, and I'm getting much more involved in it. Now, Portland has a crazy juggling scene. The big cities, basically, wherever there's more people, there's more juggling. So it wouldn't be worse for me. I would lose the particular people that I juggle with here, but I'd gain all these new people, right? But ultimately, I still check Craigslist sometimes, but I don't think it's serious. I think I'm going to stay here and just try to get by doing what I do here. But we all have this issue, especially if you're working in media, like both of us are. You got to chase your dreams if you want to go big. It's not really going to happen here. So that's kind of like my summary of the situation. So the new thing that I'm doing, I kind of hinted at this. So I've been more active on Instagram lately, and I've had some really fun experiences on Instagram. Basically, so there's this dance party that has been going on, from my understanding, for about 2 years, but I only discovered it earlier this summer through Instagram. It's good that I'm on Instagram because there's a lot of stuff that is not on social media. It might also be on TikTok, but the key thing is not on Facebook or Twitter, which used to be it's not on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, right? Or at least it's not as prevalent there, even if it's on there. So there's this dance party that goes on that these guys, arcane artists, are producing. And it's once a month in the summer, and maybe it continues into the winter, although it doesn't sound as appealing in the winter because it's half outside. I don't really think it works as well, but maybe they do it in the winter. All I know is I discovered it in the summer, so they were doing it in the summer. It's this dance party at this skate park in Arcata. And so it's last weekend of the month, and it's awesome. It's electronic dance music, EDM, which I was super into back in the day, and which I've always kind of maintained the relationship with. And so they have these parties. So I saw this flyer on Instagram. The first one I saw was hours before the party was about to happen. So I stumbled upon it. Good for the algorithm for showing me these guys. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? And I could tell by the flyer that I was going to like it. So I go to the party, and it's a fucking rager. These guys are throwing raves, real-on raves in Arcata. Like a rave, is kind of like electronic dance music all-night party. These parties don't go all night. They probably don't let them. The city probably only permits them for a certain time, so they close down at 2:15. But
still pretty good. 2:15.
It's still pretty good because it's outside of it's on South G Street, headed towards the March. It's outside of the developed area. There's nobody who lives there. It's just businesses around there. On a Friday night at midnight, no one's got their business open. So yeah, you're making tons of noise, but who cares? Yeah, who cares? But it's still close enough to town. It's like right on the edge of town. So the reason I bring this up in connection to what I'm doing is that, so I go to one of these parties and I'm like, holy shit, this is incredible. So I'm like, I'm going to start making hype videos from these parties, which is totally different than what I've done previously. So the next party, I send them a message on Instagram saying, hey, can I come in with my camera and make a hype video? I'm not asking to be paid. I'm not asking to get a free ticket. I'm just asking that you're going to see me with a camera. A lot of back and forth. A ton of back and forth. What are you doing? What's the purpose? Are you going to give us the footage? Blah, blah, blah. All this stuff. Finally, they say, yeah, it's fine. So they have one of the things that makes the party cool. They have all these things that make the party cool. They have fire dancers outside. There's this woman, Bella Fire. She does all these fire performances. That's her thing. She's a fire dancer. So I go, and first thing, I made 2 videos from this party. The first video I made was of just Bella. Basically performing. And when you're at a party, everybody's got their phone up and is shooting video, right? And so, when I talk to other videographers, one of the things that we lament is, like, back in the day, one of the things that was unique about our art form is that we had purchased cameras and we had invested in the technology, and no one else had a camera. But in 2002, no one had a camera, right? You didn't have phone cameras. So if you were the guy with the video camera, even if you didn't have that much talent, at least you had a video camera. No one else did. But now that's not the case. Everybody is shooting video all the time and they're posting it all the time. So there's just this sea of video footage all the time. But can you actually create a story that's interesting and compelling? If what you're shooting by itself, right, if you capture something that's very compelling, you don't need to create a story because just the footage will be compelling. But most things aren't like that. Most of the time, you have to edit and create a story, which I have experience doing. So I created a video that, it's just this woman dancing with music and special effects, but it's very interesting in my opinion. And the video did quite well on Instagram, and she was super stoked and I was super stoked, and it's really cool. Part of it I shot in slow motion, so I have her in slow motion. And when you're fire dancing in slow motion,
it's got to be an incredible shot.
It's so cool. So I do this. This is my first kind of hype video, and she likes it, and it's getting liked and all. And the thing is that my old crowd on Facebook, my news stories, because I look at my analytics. The average, it's people in their 50s and 60s, that's who's watching my videos. They probably all own their homes. They're civically minded. They're professionals, they're like pillars of the community. They go to the Rotary Club, On Instagram, I see who's liking my videos because I click on their profile, and it's all 20-year-old girls. That's who's liking my videos, right? It's a totally different scene. So this is super fun. I'm like, oh yeah, this was my goal. I want to start talking and
branch out,
creating art for new people, and it's also a bunch of, this is a separate rant, but it's also a bunch of girls who lock their accounts. I don't fucking understand this whole concept of having an Instagram account where you can't look at what they're posting. What's the point of the Instagram account? Separate conversation, but okay. So that's the first video that I make. The second video I make from that same party is just a highlight package of everything else that was going on at the party. So not only do they have fire dancers, they got pole dancers. Now the pole dancers are not naked. There's this new art form of non-stripping pole dancing. It's still sexualized dancing big time, but it's not.
It's fully clothed.
Their nipples and their vaginas are covered. Everything else is optional, right?
Oh.
So a lot of girls are in basically bikinis, G-string bikinis, but other girls are have more covered, but it's not stripping. Okay. And they're also not giving lap dances. They're just in a section where there's a little platform where they're doing pole dancing. And in Arcata, there are pole dancing classes. It's a new art form for non-stripping pole dancing. I consider it a new art form. I never heard of it until 10 years ago. When you say pole dancing, you think of strippers, right?
Yeah.
So it's definitely highly sexualized, but they're not naked. And they're not giving lap dances. There's no touching them. There's nothing. So that's going on right in the middle of the party. Then there are also because it's in a skate park, there are all these platforms everywhere, right? Think of a skate park, right? There's all the space is already built for different levels, which makes it visually very interesting. And they put up these chain link fences on some of the platforms to create the effect of a dungeon. It's very BDSM type vibes. And so they have these girls. Basically, there's this crew of girls called the Vagabond Dancers in Humboldt who will show up at your party and dance and just be girls and give energy, because that's what a good party is about, is hot girls. And so they're there. And then there's just the party and the DJ. And then there's the monitor in front of the DJ, right? Having all the psychedelic visuals. There's the lights. It's a very good party. It's a very good party. So I made a hype video, which is new to me, right? This is not what I've been doing the whole time. I'm the super straight dude. And so I made a hype video, and the hype video came out really good, and people were liking it like crazy. And I'm super stoked. I accomplished what I was trying to accomplish, which is hard on your first run on a new art form. You know this. So now I'm energized on Instagram. This got me very fired up. And so I'm trying to do more stuff like this and not just be a news reporter.
Okay, you're branching out a little bit.
Correct. So that's why I say, when you asked me when I first walked in, how am I doing? And I was like, oh, pretty good, actually.
Doing good.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if I can, this was like one thing. I want to like, so, I mean, the background is that like, so these EDM parties are like a big part of my life. Like when I was in my 20s, I mean, I was going to these all night dance parties. I was getting fucked up. I was raging, right? And I was doing my thing and living the life. Now I'm older. I don't get fucked up anymore. But I'm still connected to this scene and it's still very important to me. So to come in and make artwork based on this scene and to bring my video skills to this world is very important to me because these parties are not just parties to me. They're so foundational to how I kind of like just—
They're a part of you.
They're a part of me. And that's why I think I can capture them well. And I can look around and say like, you know, this means something to me and I can understand whether, and I can predict whether I'm going to be able to capture something and make something interesting out of it on video. So it's awesome.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
I'm excited for you.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm super excited about it. I'm super fired up. These guys, I mean, they're really, so my goals, part of my goals is not just to produce videos at these parties, but because I'm a juggler, that can be a performing opportunity at these parties. Now, I've talked to one of the other dudes that's in my juggling community, and we're kind of like both talking out loud about what we're thinking. We're not necessarily talking about collaborating yet, but we're both saying, you know, she could use some, these cats can use some jugglers. Now, we're dudes. We're not hot girls. And that's a big, big deal.
It's a factor.
It's the number one thing that he brought up. He, you know, and, I don't know, he was trying to be subtle about it. He's like, you know, but you have one thing that's working against you, bro. And I'm like, okay, dude. Yeah, I know I'm a dude. But, you know, there are girls at this party too who want to see guys. Now, I'm also 25 years older than the girls at these parties.
Some girls have daddy issues. I'm just saying. Just saying.
Yeah. And plus they're older girls.
Yeah.
This, you know. So my goal is to try, you know, there's this space that's open at this party. They probably are going to need more performers. Or want more performers. So the dude that I was talking to, he's like, yeah, so the move is to go to the party, shoot a video of yourself doing whatever you're proposing and send that to the organizer and see what he says. And you know, it's logical. And I said, yeah, that's a good idea. Right. I wouldn't be performing on one of the platforms because I wouldn't arrange a performance. I would just be on the floor, and there is space to kind of like there's the space close to the DJ where it's crowded, where you have like the intense energy. And then there's the back of the room where there's a lot of open space. You could easily set up a tripod. It wouldn't get kicked over. People would see that you're doing something. You can have a space, set up your tripod, and shoot something. So that's like a long-term goal. But the thing is that I have to get my juggling skills up. Basically, this is just like a long-term vision of getting my skills up and kind of performing at these sorts of parties. Because right now it's just girls. And the thing is that the girls who are performing, like from a skill standpoint, like the fire and the pole dancing, those are skills, right? It's like half sex and half skills. On the skill standpoint, I would say I'm already somewhat close to what they have. Because it's not like someone who's like, I don't know, I don't consider like what they're doing on the pole to be like a super skilled tango dancer or someone who just is really refined in their artwork. Like it's skilled work, but it's not super skilled is what I'm saying. And that's kind of the level that I'm at with juggling. So that's one of the motivations I have to become a better juggler is to try to perform at that party. And then also to keep making videos. And just that is a real inspiration. I needed a new creative inspiration. My news reporting kind of has died out for the time being. But even that, I'm doing the RCA thing on Instagram.
You just need a little something extra to fuel the fire.
Yeah. The other thing that I've shot recently is we had a juggling performance at Friday Night Market for one of the Friday Night Markets. And basically there was a lineup of like 8 different acts that went back to back to back. And I was one of them. I juggled with another woman. So that, first of all, was my first time actually in like a juggling performance, which was really cool. And it was great working with her because she's super experienced. She knows how to work the crowd. So she talks to the crowd. Because that's like a big part of it. And I don't really have that skill yet. And she does easily. She can do it in her sleep. So she was in charge. She told me what to do. She choreographed what we were going to do because she's worked in the circus for years. Like she has years of working in a traveling circus. And we did that and that was awesome. But when I wasn't performing in that Friday Night Market set, I shot video of everybody. And I'm slowly releasing those videos. I'm basically taking highlights of each act, trying to make it coherent, editing together, putting my own music under it, and releasing it. So I've done 2 of those. And those videos haven't done as well as from the dance party, but they've still, within the community, been somewhat popular. And I'm going to make more, and it's fun. It's really fun. It's nice to be producing something that's not so serious. You know?
Well, it sounds like you're passionate about it.
I am totally passionate. I'm having a great time. And it's different because it's vertical video instead of horizontal. So I'm shooting vertically. Basically, I have one tripod that has the tripod head that allows you to flip your camera on its side. So I'm, when photographers go like this, so I have my mirrorless.
You're shooting vertical format.
I'm shooting vertical format. So it's all set up to go on Instagram. It's not set up to be on YouTube or Facebook. I want to be on Instagram right now. That's where I'm concentrating to try to get these new people that I can interact with. So that's what I'm doing.
That's
Video.
exciting, man.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm excited for you.
Thanks.
I think that'll be a really cool avenue. I've never been to a rave. I'll be honest.
Okay.
I think that is on a bucket list now for me to do, is go check out a rave.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, I think that'd be cool. I think it'd be really cool for you to juggle there too. You don't have the hot girl factor, but if you have the skill, you build that up. I think people would be down to see that. I'd be down to see somebody juggle.
Right. So basically what we have now, which a lot of people have, the performers, are glow-in-the-dark clubs. So that's new
cool
technology. Basically, yeah. So the lights are inside the club. Now the problem with these clubs is that the lights constantly go out where the battery, because if the impact on the ground, there's electricity. And when you're juggling, and so what a lot of jugglers will do who have these clubs is they'll never juggle on a hard floor. They'll only do it on grass. But that defeats the whole purpose. Like half the time you want to juggle, there's no grass. Like this is like concrete floors, inside the skate park. Like I've got to just be willing to let my clubs slam on the floor. And so I just had to send the club back that is broken. It's like $45 to ship it down there and have them replace it. So that's a somewhat annoying. But that's just an aside. But there's and I'm getting better as a juggler. Basically, when I went through this phase of not producing video in the last year, I upped my juggling. And that's kind of like what I've been into. And I've not been working. I've had a lot of free time and I've been juggling a lot and getting better. And it's really cool and really fun.
That's cool, man. I think that would be a good thing to do. And shit, if you could get paid to juggle at these events, that's even better, right?
My buddy, who is a little bit more on the inside, the guy I was talking to about it, he said that he thinks the dancers, those girls who spend the night, right? So it's basically, this party starts at 9 and goes to 2:30. So they're there for 5.5 hours. He says he thinks they get paid $100. It's not a huge amount of money, obviously, if you do the hourly. And they're not dancing the whole time, to be clear, because they have shifts, because you can't like be performing for 5 hours straight. But they're probably on for 20 minutes. They're off for 40. They're on for 20, something like that. He says he thinks they're making $100, and there's probably like 6 girls who do this. It's probably like a total of 6, maybe fewer, maybe like 4. But just to be making money in that way, in something that's so fun and creative, that would make my day,
And you have fun making the videos off of that too.
And the videos, yep. And
you can build up a community online from that as well.
Yeah. So that's like a whole new thing that's going on, and I'm really enjoying it.
Damn. Juggling.
Yeah. And basically, I mean, this is a little bit technical about juggling, but there's kind of different styles of juggling. And there's basically one string. Think of it as almost like different types of music or something, right? There's music, but there's tons of different types of music. There's different types of juggling. There is a stream of juggling that I need to get into that I have not gotten into, which is kind of like called flow or like contact juggling, which is basically, instead of throwing the clubs up and juggling and catching them, it's more about you're moving and you're using the club as like a prop to create this flow image, and you're manipulating them without letting go of them. So you're almost like using them as like a baton or like a wand. And that's more, in my view, consistent with like the energy that's going on at these parties. But I've never done that part of juggling. So that's the bad news, is that I have no experience about that. Now, the good news is that when the winter comes, my style of juggling, normally I don't juggle that much because it's cold outside and you can't juggle. But if you're working on flow contact juggling, you can work on it indoors.
Oh, there you go.
So that's like a huge thing that I've already told myself this winter. I got to start getting into that because I can do it in my place. You don't have to be outside. It's raining outside. That's fine. You're inside and you're working on that. You're just flowing and you're manipulating the clubs without throwing them high into the air. And that, if you do that at like a dance party, it's going to be, and the clubs again are lighting up, right? They're glowing in the dark. That's going to create psychedelic energy, which is what the whole party's about.
Is that an easier form of juggling to learn?
I don't think it's easier or harder. I think it's just different. It's a different expression. It's like saying, is it easier to play, R&B or punk? I don't know.
It's just different.
It's just different. It's two different things. So
you were pretty big in the rave scene growing up then.
Oh yeah.
That was like your go-to.
Oh yeah.
It's going to raves.
Yeah. Oh, that was my thing, dude.
Where did you grow up?
Well, in New Jersey.
Oh, I would imagine that's perfect for raves.
So I only got into it my last year in New Jersey. I was a late bloomer. So I only got into it when I was 21 years old.
Oh, wow.
But then I came to the West Coast and and then I was blasting in the Bay.
Better rave scene in the Bay or in New Jersey?
I would say they're comparable. They were both great. I don't prefer one or the other. They were both awesome. It was all great. One of the best social media experiences that I have is there's a Facebook group called I Raved in the San Francisco Bay Area in the 90s. And
of course there's a Facebook group for that.
The thing is, it's like what the internet was supposed to be at the beginning. It's all positive. Like no one dunks on anybody else. Everybody talks about like really fun, positive things all the time. That's all it's about, is sharing your awesome experiences. And it's like every time I see there's a new post on that group, I'm like, oh, let me read. It's always great. But yeah, those were the days. It was amazing. And that was like the beginning of my experience of kind of transitioning from I was a late bloomer. Like I said, this is not me. Most people have these experiences like they're 16, 17. I was a late bloomer. I was having them later, but these were like foundational experiences for me.
What was foundational about it?
Well, first of all, I was blowing my mind. I was getting royally fucked up. I was doing LSD all night. I was doing other drugs occasionally that supplemented them. And I was doing coke at the same time. I was doing meth. I was doing speed.
Oh, shit. Oh, you were going in.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Now, that wasn't all the time. The LSD was basically all the time. That's the base. Occasionally, I was doing ecstasy. Ecstasy is like known as the rave drug, which is now called Molly. And I think it's the same thing. I don't do drugs anymore, so I don't really know what's going on in the drug scene right now. But
that's what I envision when I think of raves as ecstasy.
Yeah.
Which Molly, yeah, they're the exact same thing. Just different names.
So I was never into ecstasy. So there's really two wings within the drug. Are you doing ecstasy or are you doing LSD? Ecstasy is much more like cuddle circles. Like piles of people just...
It's like touchy-feely, right?
It's super touchy-feely. It's piles of strangers just being on top of each other and giving each other massages and just being super affectionate and, making out and, whereas LSD is very much not that. LSD is, ecstasy is round and soft and feminine. LSD is sharp, pointy, masculine, right? It's a difference.
So I feel like that would not be the thing you would want to take in an environment like that.
What, the LSD?
Yeah.
No, but you do, because the sense of losing the emotional experience that you have when you separate from your physical body and your kind of spirit is interacting with the music but without your brain working as an intermediary is magic.
Are you able to detach from the space that you're in to be able to do that? Because I would think being around that many people in that environment as you're going through this experience would be challenging.
Well, if you're finding the peak wave, if you have tapped into the highest level, then the physical space around you becomes irrelevant because you're being moved directly by the music. And so you're watching almost a spectator as you watch yourself dance because your mind has been taken out of it and you're just flowing with as the music creates a direct connection to your body and starts moving your body almost like a puppeteer. The music is the puppeteer. And that's like when you're reaching the highest levels of LSD. And so you're not even on this planet when that is happening. That's the kind of out of body experience that people have. And I was chasing it all the time.
Did you ever have a bad trip in that environment?
Well, I had bad ecstasy trips.
But not bad LSD?
Well, so I've had bad LSD trips, but not at raves. I've had bad psychedelic experiences where, I mean, this can get into the, basically, a lot, like ecstasy in particular, will accentuate whatever it is that is going on in your life. If you're living a happy life, you take ecstasy, you're gonna have an amazing experience. If you're a sad person and you take ecstasy, it will take you to the depths of your despair and pain and sadness. That's my experience. When I was very sad and I started doing psychedelic drugs during a period of my life when I was very sad, it took me into a fucking dungeon that is quite dangerous. I managed to survive it and I managed to get past it. And to a certain extent, LSD also did that and took me into a bad place. Because we put up kind of walls between ourselves and our emotions, but you can't hide from yourself when you're on these drugs. And so that is why they are potentially extremely dangerous and I have had painful experiences doing them. But the period of my life when I was doing psychedelic drugs, my life got much better, not necessarily because of the drugs. My life got much better a few months, maybe a year into my rave experiences. And once that happened, and once I kind of turned the corner and became happier, my experiences were mostly positive. Now, sometimes when I was doing LSD, it wouldn't be that amazing. It wouldn't be that psychedelic, and I wouldn't have the experience that I'm describing with the music moving your body, but other times it would. And that would just be, I mean, we're talking about nights where I would go out and, like, from my perspective, I was, the party's just getting started. I was only out I was only dancing for 20 minutes. Boom, they flip on the lights. They say the party's over at 6 a.m. Like, I've been dancing for 7 hours, but I have no idea that I've been dancing for 7 hours. To me, it's like just starting. It's just so amazing. And you're not conscious of yourself. You don't have these, your kind of filters and kind of brain activity is not monitoring everything in the same way as it normally is because the drug has taken over. And obviously that's a dangerous thing, but it can be magical. And it often is. And I say that sometimes I wasn't, when you asked me about how it was with other people, yes, sometimes I wasn't aware of the other people and it didn't involve other people, but other times it can be, I mean, you're in these environments where, right, it's dark, right? The lights, there are kind of like maybe strobe lights and different lights that are going on, but you have no idea like what the separation is between the wall and people and music and turntables and DJ and yourself. It's all kind of like this big morass of stuff. And it's all mysterious. And then the people are all usually like dressed in pretty interesting ways, right? They're not going to some fucking corporate office job when they're showing up.
Nobody's in a pantsuit.
No, nobody's in a pantsuit, right? So it's a lot of interesting visual stimulation that is like kind of like mysterious, but also interesting.
What does a bad ecstasy trip look like? Is it just emotional? Are you in your head?
Yeah, I mean, it's emotional. Yeah, I mean, I was at a club in New York City with a friend of mine, and I was having a rough time. Luckily, I was with a friend of mine who is now a therapist, and he was always a really smart guy. And he was quite experienced with psychedelic drugs, even though we were young. He got into it way before I was, and he was kind of showing me the ropes of psychedelics, I would say. And luckily, I was having a tough time, and he was there. And he's so chill about everything and so understanding. Okay, you're having a rough time, and you're on a psychedelic drug. Okay, it's fine. You know. For me, it was combined with the fact that when I was young, I suffered from chronic depression. That is meaning that I was painfully sad all the time for no particular reason. This is considered a mental illness by psychiatrists. You know, a lot of people talk about depression. A lot of people have it. So I had it when I was young. So normally I would try to coach myself and not feel as sad, but when the drug takes over, you're powerless.
You're along for the ride.
Yeah, you are just absolutely powerless. You are neutralized as far as your ability to coach yourself, and it all kind of like hits you. And the thing about chronic depression is that the reason it's chronic is that it's not spurred by a specific thing. It's not that your girlfriend dumped you. It's not that you got evicted from your place. It's not that you lost your job. It's chronic. There's a problem going on that it's not tied to a specific event. So I don't remember I could not explain why I was feeling painfully sad. This is both in life, but the ecstasy exacerbated it, made it a lot worse. And so that's what happened. It tears down your defenses and makes you defenseless. And that's dangerous.
So where are you at 21 prior to going into this rave scene? What is going on in your life? Where are you at?
Well, so I think that the basically I started being chronically depressed probably when I hit puberty. As I look back on it, I think what happened is that, so you go through this transition, right? First you're kids, and then there's a moment, and it's not a moment, it's a period of time where we're transitioning from being boys to men. So one of the main things that caused a lot of anxiety was that guys started to talk about girls at a age before I was ready. Basically, and part of that is probably biological because I went through puberty very late. And so when the other guys were starting to be comfortable talking about girls, I wasn't like there yet. I was still like a boy. And so that was the first moment when I try to look back on it that I think that I started to get extremely anxious. Because, you know, it's so like we don't remember this from when we're a kid because a lot of stuff doesn't matter when you're an adult. But like, if you can't participate in a conversation or if you feel like you're excluded or you're not part of it, like when you're a kid, it's brutal, right? When you're an adult, you're just like, oh, those people are talking about stuff I don't care about. Whatever, I'll be over here doing my thing and I'll find my own crowd. Who cares, right? And especially going to a private school, I went to a private school where there's a very small number of people. You can't go find your own crowd. Like there's very few people in the school. Like we're all together in each other's faces all the time. And they're all talking about girls. And I wasn't ready yet. And so that I think made me anxious. And I never recovered throughout high school, I feel. And then basically even after high school for a few years, I was awkward about it. Even when I was a late teenager in early 20s, I basically couldn't talk to girls unless I got drunk, which is terrible. That's like awful. Getting drunk to talk to girls is like a very big behavioral problem, and you got to like address that. I don't have that problem anymore. I'm perfectly fine now. I'm older now, but I mean, I used to get shit-faced fucking drunk in my late teenage years and early 20s, and then go out to parties and go to frat parties and talk to girls. Once I got shit-faced fucking drunk, then I'm a reasonably good-looking guy, and girls would talk to me. Yeah. I wasn't getting laid, but I was at least talking to girls and like making out with them in like the middle of the dance floor, like all sloppy, like, you know,
having a good time.
That's the best I could do. Yeah. So that happened. But for whatever reason, I was never able to recover emotionally, psychologically. It's like I went into this spiral based on this issue of not being comfortable around kind of just boys turning into men. I was never comfortable. I was much more like sensitive and emotional, and kind of like, I would say, I don't think I was really effeminate because I played on the high school basketball team. Like, I always liked sports. I always liked to watch sports, but I was just emotionally sensitive. And I still am that way. Like, for example, like most of my best friends throughout my life have been women that I've never slept with. Right. So that's like a somewhat odd characteristic. I have a lot of female friends like that. There is like an aspect of my personality that is very much more female than male. And it's funny, a good friend of mine, she once was telling me, I think, about a guy that she was dating. And she was like frustrated with their connection. And she's like, I just want to be able, it's like, she's like, yeah, I just want to be able to talk to him the way I talk to my girlfriends and the way I talk to you. And I was like,
how do I take that?
Yeah. I was like, is that a good thing? Was that a compliment or was that a dunk?
I feel like I just got hit with the back of your hand.
Yeah, totally. So, I don't know. So I had these challenges, but around the same time, the reason I went into this whole story is that you were asking about what was going on in my life at age 21. Around the same time that I started experimenting with psychedelic drugs, I also started taking Prozac, which is an antidepressant, or an SSRI as they call it now. And Prozac massively changed the entirety of my life and changed what it means for me to be alive and be conscious. Prozac doesn't work for everybody. Antidepressants don't work on everybody, but they were built for people like me. And it massively, as soon as I started taking it, changed the entire thing. So I took Prozac for a few years, and I haven't taken it in many, many years. And the reason why I don't need to take it anymore is because once I learned the lesson that the medication taught me, then I learned the lesson. I don't need the medication anymore.
What was the lesson?
And the lesson was how to be in situations and not see it from a negative point of view, instead see it from a positive point of view. That's not something, it's unclear to me. If it hadn't been for Prozac, it's possible that I would have lived the rest of my life in pain, in emotional pain, because I was seeing things from a negative point of view and being self-conscious. So here are some examples. This was, and I'm all very, very much aware of all this stuff going on because I process how I feel a lot. I went to a party a few months ago a house party, where there were all these hot girls there, which was quite surprising to me because as you get older, there are fewer hot girls around you because girls aren't as hot as they get older. Same with guys. Guys aren't as hot either as they get older. It's just, we decline. So I was at this party, and at the party, I'm like very cognizant of the fact that, wow, there's a lot of hot girls at this party. And I'm like, this is amazing because I don't really go to parties anymore where there are hot girls. Cool, sweet. The problem was for me, these were a bunch of musicians, and I'm not a musician. So I was kind of like on the outside at this party, right? Because they were all playing music, and I'm just like, cool, you know, and I'm not playing music. They're like, grab a drum. I'm uncomfortable. I can sing. I like to sing, but I'm uncomfortable playing instruments. Like I just get somewhat self-conscious about it. I can't really drum, you know. So it kind of sucked. And so I felt like somewhat of an outsider. My friend had brought me to the party. I only knew my friend. I didn't know any of the hosts. I didn't know, they had like got their whole crew there. I didn't know anybody except my one friend. So I felt like a little bit inadequate. I'm like, damn, it really sucks that I don't play music, right? I mean, everybody else is just grabbing a drum. They probably don't even consider themselves musicians. They're just playing hand drums, being groovy. It's just like a jam, whatever. It's not a big deal. But I wasn't able to fit in. Now, the old me would have been basically getting down on myself and saying, I'm a loser. I don't fit in. People don't like me. These girls were looking right through me. They're good looking girls. So of course they didn't care about me. They're not going to care about someone like me who's like so inadequate because I don't know how to play music and I don't know how to talk to girls. And it's just the worst thing. And it's like so bad that I'm a loser. The new me is like, I mean, yeah, it would be nice if I learned to play music, and I might set as a goal to just learn basic rhythms on a drum. But I mean, I'm very much not a loser. First of all, I don't know what those girls were thinking. They might have been talking to each other after the party saying, who was that cute guy that showed up? I have no idea that they were looking right through me. That's in my head. It's completely me making stuff up. Second of all, these girls, while they were hot girls, they're not the be all and end all of girls. There are tons of girls throughout my life that have been interested in me who are hot. I can just think about all the hot girls that have liked me throughout my life to get my self-esteem back up. These girls, who gives a shit? I saw them for 3 hours. They're not the be all and end all of girls. I can just, oh, girls don't like me. Fuck that. Tons of girls like me. I've hooked up with hot girls before. I don't need to be obsessing over a few girls at some house party of people it's just a totally different way of understanding things, right? No, and besides, when I was depressed, I had this thing that other people, you just tell yourself stories. People they don't think about me. They think that, or they think I'm weird and they don't think I fit in, and they're never going to accept me. These girls met me one night. What are they supposed to do? All come over to me and be like, who are you? What's up? They've got their own lives. There's nothing bad going on. I could have gone up. They probably thought I was fine. It's not a big deal. Move on with your life. So that's just an example of positive thinking versus negative thinking. You can tell yourself all day that they think you're a loser because you don't play music, and they think you're a weirdo. Nobody was probably thinking that. And even if someone thinks that about you, who cares? It's a stranger at a house party. It means nothing. It means nothing. There are tons of people who think I'm cool. You think I'm cool. If they don't,
but just fucking with you.
Yeah. So
it's all about just, the power of positive thought and reframing your thoughts. It's easy to go into one of those death spirals where you think the world is against you and nobody likes you, and then you just doom loop.
And a lot of people are caught in that spiral, and it's terrible. And having gotten out of it, I'm sympathetic to people that are in it. I mean, I used to just be sad all the time and making up stories about. Now, the thing is that, like, what I was hinting at with private school is that it's a very closed-in environment. There were 40 people in my graduating class, 20 boys. So
it's a small group.
You can't go find your own crowd. There's no your own crowd to find.
It's not big enough.
No, it's not big enough. So people are thinking about you, and they are, right? This kind of like paranoia isn't really paranoia if people are actually talking about you all the time, right? So people did have reputations, and they were talking about, I was talking about other people, and other people were talking about me. And so the lack of, basically, I graduated high school as a virgin. I did not have sex in high school. That was like, you got street cred by getting laid in high school. It's probably every high school. I don't know, but this is definitely the way it worked there. And so I was super self-conscious about that all the time, and I couldn't get over it. And I didn't know how to talk to girls, so I couldn't change it. That made me very anxious. Like, guys got street cred by hooking up with girls. And you look at that now, and like, now I look at that, it's like, who the fuck cares if someone else is getting laid? I mean, if a dude confides in me and tells me, oh, I'm not getting laid, I'll be like, oh, that sucks. But like, we move on in like 2 seconds, right? It's nothing. It's nothing. But when you're like 16, dude, that's everything. You've been 16. You know this, right? Am I saying anything?
No, yeah, it's everything.
It's everything.
Were you taking psychedelics at the same time you were on Prozac?
Correct.
Do you think that the psychedelics had any influence on that as well? That kind of perspective shift?
Well,
but it doesn't seem like you were taking psychedelics necessarily to get super introspective. I mean, were they always in the context of a rave or a party?
No, they did not start in that context. They started with me hanging out with friends from high school who I was still in touch with, even though we were not in high school anymore. And them being awesome people and really solid friends. So even though I was feeling a lot of pressure from, well, it's all different people, but basically I maintained a relationship with some of these people from high school, and they got into psychedelics and they brought me into psychedelics, and they were very supportive. We had gotten a little bit older. They were, they didn't know about all this depression stuff. I'm not telling them about this stuff, and dudes don't talk about this stuff. I wasn't talking about it with anybody. But they brought me into the world of psychedelics. And once I started doing psychedelics, I realized that this way that I'd been experiencing life was not normal. Basically, I diagnosed myself as having a mental illness. At that point, I went to see a therapist. The first therapist was terrible. The second therapist I went to was awesome and very supportive and very calm about talking to me about my life and saying, you sound like a person that has classic chronic depression. This is a disease. I've talked to many people that experience, you're not alone. Many people experience life like this. There's nothing wrong with you for having this disease. It's just something, it's unfortunate. It's at least at the time, the belief was that this was a problem in neurochemistry, that there were certain synapses. He explained the theoretical scientific background for why people experience consciousness like this. And he prescribed me Prozac, and I started taking it. And he said, okay, hopefully within, like 2 weeks, it will start to have an effect on you. And within 2 weeks, it started to have this earth-shattering foundational effect on the way I was experiencing being alive. And it was immense. Now, so that's the link between psychedelics and the Prozac, is that the psychedelics alerted me to the crisis because they brought down my filters and they made me aware of the fact that, why am I in pain all the time? This is so crazy. I should try to do something about this.
What was it specifically about the Prozac? Do you think that it gave you enough breathing room where you could start to implement those changes of thought?
It's not that it. One second, let me take a drink here. I'm talking a lot, dude. I'm getting hoarse.
You've been yeah, we've been going at it.
It's more intense than that. What the drug did. What Prozac did is it basically conducted an intervention. It's more powerful than allowing me to change my thoughts. It changed my thoughts. It took over my brain and made me experience reality in a different way. So it's not like I'm some very brave person that was able to overcome challenges. No. This drug went into my brain and rearranged things so that the natural way that I started to react to the world was much happier and healthier and closer to what people who don't experience chronic depression or depression are able to experience, which is what I do now, which is, wow, I'm a normal person. I have ups and downs, but there are not extended periods of unexplained sadness. And Prozac just did that. It rearrange things. So I didn't really have to do anything. It started happening on its own. My relationship with my father got much better. I went from having this very sad, I remember thinking, oh, now I'm much better able to deal with my dad than I used to be. And everything got better. My relationship, how I talk to girls. I no longer had to drink alcohol like crazy. I just had more of a positive perspective. I just talked to girls when I liked them and was comfortable and whatever, was like just doing regular things. The drug took over. Like I said, it's designed, some people don't react to it because we're talking about such a ethereal thing, someone's emotions and someone's like psychology and their brain and their spirit, really. But for me, I mean, I'm like an advertisement for Prozac. Prozac changed everything for me. But now the fact, you could say that I'm a good person because I was, or not that I'm a good person, but that that there's an accomplishment in the fact that I went off Prozac. But for me, that was obvious because, like I said, I had just learned the lesson about how to understand myself and other people in a more positive way. And once I had learned that lesson, dude, I'm not going back. Why would I fucking go back to pain and sadness? I just coach myself up and I say, and when I was at this house party that I'm telling you about, I was like, shit, man, I can't believe I don't play music. But then I'm immediately like, yeah, but I do 9 other cool things. So, and these people right now are not doing any of the 9 cool things that I do. But if we did those things, some of these guys would be outsiders. This is just the way the world works. It's not a big deal. Move on, right? So that it's just a much happier way of approaching things. And I'm good about coaching myself because when I have negative thoughts, now I have an infrastructure of positivity that I can lean on and go back to. The problem before my Prozac days is that I didn't have the infrastructure of positivity. I was constantly experiencing sadness. There was no other way for me to perceive things. There was no other prism through which I could experience reality. So it was awful.
How did you know when it was time to start winding down on the Prozac? Was that a deliberate choice or it was just emergent?
So basically, I was getting the Prozac prescribed on my mom's medical insurance because you could stay on your parents' Prozac until you're 25. This is the problem with the American medical system. My mom had a good job working. She was a teacher, so she had very good medical insurance through she's a public employee. When I was turning 25, I can't be on her insurance anymore, and I did not have a job that had my own insurance. So, my mom, because she's awesome, is like, I'll just pay out of pocket for your Prozac. I'm like, I don't want you to pay out of pocket for my Prozac. I'm just going to see if I go off. My therapist recommended I not do that I not go off the Prozac. I'm like, I'm going off Prozac. I'm good to go here. This is what I'm doing. And I went off it, and I was right that I had learned my lesson. There's not much I didn't need it anymore. It's not that I went off it because I lost the medical insurance.
How sad is that?
That's like that. Yeah,
it's just a testament to our medical system.
Yeah,
went off the Prozac because you can't stay on your mom's.
It's a good thing.
26.
I mean, in the end, the fact that for another person, it might have really been bad. It's a good thing that I'm not on the medication. You always want to not be on medication. But yeah, so that's like a big story. That's I don't know if I've told anybody that story in that level of detail before. So thanks for the platform.
That was interesting.
Yeah.
Did the psychedelic usage continue after that, or did they both kind of subside around the same time?
They both kind of subsided around the same time. Basically, the thing about, I have one friend who, he's been doing LSD his whole life. He's the same age. He's one of these dudes from high school who supported me. He introduced me to psychedelics. He still goes out to concerts and does LSD, and not as much as we were doing in our early 20s, like not every weekend, but like he still goes out and does LSD. And when he tells me this, I'm always cracking up that he's a very, chill guy. He's super responsible, but he still likes to do it. He still likes to party like that. I kind of decided at some point, there's only so many times you can blow your mind because you become who you are. Okay, you blow your mind, you have this new pathway for your life, but you can't keep making new pathways for your life. Like you gotta at some point like go down one of those pathways that have opened up for you. Like you
can't just keep opening doors.
Yeah, you gotta
walk through one.
Yeah, exactly. So when I saw that a couple things happened simultaneously. Number one, I saw that there were no new doors to open. Like I was just kind of like doing the LSD and kind of like, sure, it's still pretty interesting because the visuals aspect, I like hallucinating. And that's still pretty interesting. And if I was to do it today, it would probably be interesting because I would hallucinate. But the new doors thing is limited. The second thing that was happening is because psychedelic drugs, I always did them or mostly did them in the context of dance parties. I was getting to the point, these parties that I was going to in SF, they were mostly teenagers. At this point, I was like 25 years old going to parties with like 19-year-olds. It's like kind of like,
I gotta get out of here.
bro, I wasn't 25, I was 24. And it's like, but like, it's only 5 years, but because that's not that far away from your age, right? 5 years is, no, you should not be hanging out with 19-year-olds. So I was like, I got to move on. And I basically did. And then I basically stopped smoking weed around the same time because, cannabis it's so different. It's such a different drug because it's so subtle. But I'm not a very good pot smoker in the sense that, I used to smoke pot all the time. I love smoking pot like everybody else, but I turn inward and I become very lie in bed, stare at the ceiling for hours. And because I am like that anyway, like I stare at the ceiling for hours anyway, that's what I like to do. It just makes me more of the thing that I already am. Whereas I always need to force myself to socialize and go out and have new experiences with people. So I quit smoking weed because cannabis just makes me very solo, solitary in my head. And I'm already so that way anyway.
You need to kind of push back against that. You need something that's going to cause you to go out.
Yeah.
Not stay in more.
Yeah. So that was the end of the psychedelics, end of the cannabis, and basically, the rest. I was hoping when I quit smoking cannabis that I would become this more outgoing person. It really hasn't happened. It's not like I'm super like social now. I'm not at all. So, are you a big weed smoker?
I've had phases.
Yeah.
In college, for various reasons. It was usually more of a social aspect for me, just because you're going out to parties.
Yeah.
You're drinking a lot. I would always do it to it would almost have a sobering effect for me. So if I was drinking a lot, you smoke a little bit and then it balances you back out and you can keep going. Which is definitely not healthy, but conducive to the environment that I was in,
And what about psychedelics?
I've had some experiences, but my experiences have never been in public. It's always not even with friends. It's always just been me with a very, I don't know if you would say, a very introspective bend, trying to figure things out about myself and who I am.
So you've taken them only by yourself? Wow. Holy.
Yeah, probably not. Not recommended, especially for the first few trips of whatever you're doing, but that's been my experience.
Are we talking about mushrooms?
Yeah, shrooms have been my experiences.
Wow, man. Just doing these things by yourself. It's
pretty serious.
That's pretty rare. People to only do them by yourself and every different experience it's always been by yourself. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if that's. I've never heard that recommended to anybody to go down that path.
I have not.
That way.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not familiar with someone who only does them by themselves. This is probably the first time I've heard that.
Yeah, I don't know what that says about me, but that has been,
And are you going for a hike, or
Nope.
You're in your room
outside in my backyard. So outdoors, there's always the inclination to be outdoors. But never in public, never with any friends also involved in the trip. Just me for the ride. Yeah.
And so you've come, that man, dude, I don't know what to say. That's
crazy, right?
Yeah, that is really unusual. And are you going into it with, what's your goal going into it? Like, what are you doing?
I think just trying to understand myself on a fundamental level. I realized through one experience that the state of my relationships was causing me a lot of distress, and how I fundamentally viewed relationships, romantic, friendships, family relationships, was completely flawed. I used to think that they were this static thing that you would plug into and almost charge up, and then you could unplug and they would stay at that level until you charge them back up again. that they were this kind of static world, and you would enter them and then you would leave them, but they wouldn't change unless you were actively involved in them. And that was just complete bullshit, that relationships are like plants and you have to water them and you have to tend to them or they will die on the vine. And it was just this profound realization that the way that I had been living my life and cultivating these things and interfacing with the world was essentially a lie. And it's not how the world works. But I had been, I'd believed that wholeheartedly, that relationships, you could have a best friend, not talk to them for a decade, and you guys would still be best friends, that you would still have that same connection. You would just pick up right where you left off, and then wherever you left it, that's where you would pick up the next time. And that's not reality. That was probably one of the more profound things. I've had some bad ones. I don't think of them as bad ones. A bad trip is a common phrase, understandably, but I think of them as just lessons that I fought during the trip to learn, but they were necessary. I had one where I realized I was completely overly stimulated in the way that I was living my life through social media, I couldn't eat food without watching something. I couldn't just sit and be still with myself. And so during the trip, I'm trying to find the darkest, quietest place that I could. I ended up sitting in my closet with like a blanket over me, and it was almost quiet enough. And I remember thinking, I'm trying to chase this stillness. And it was because I felt like there was a constant state of stimulation that I was plugging into in my life. And that for me to just sit still was such a huge task that I didn't feel like I was up for. That was another big one. But yeah, never with anybody else. So weed is a social one. I've been taking some pretty serious bomb rips and then gone out. No, that's a different story. But yeah, not with psychedelics.
Do any of your friends, have you had any time period where your friends wanted to have a group experience doing psychedelics and you just turned it down, or not really? Your friends aren't into that?
Some of my friends aren't, but some of them would be. Like if I hit them up and said, hey, do you want to kill a Saturday? It's nice outside. Yeah. They would be down for it. I think I don't know. And I don't know if I could now do it with somebody else. I think that the experiences that I've cultivated in the relationship that I now have with those experiences, I don't know how I would act if other people were around. I definitely don't know if I could. That's not true. I was on shrooms one time when I went to a baseball game and I didn't lose my shit, but I was out with some friends and we had taken a little bit, and then me and a buddy had taken an edible after that, and I had forgotten that we took shrooms, and this was my first experience mixing the two. I've never done that before, and it was just not great. Everything was like a blur. I didn't know where we were. We were out in San Francisco at a baseball game, and there's thousands of people around. The city's alive, and I'm just like, what the fuck is happening? It felt like every time I blinked, an hour would go by. I remember one catch from the game. I don't even know who caught it. I just remember everyone standing up and cheering, and it was like, that's not. I think alcohol is my social lubricant, and everything else is more introspective, which is probably dangerous because I'm severely introspective just in general. So there's kind of a balance you have to mix with that.
Introspective guy hosting a podcast. That's good.
Interesting. Yeah, but the person that I was before this would be completely surprised that I'm doing a podcast. I used to think that talking to people was a complete waste of time. I mean, one of my core foundational beliefs was that if you have a problem and you tell somebody else about your problem, you are unnecessarily burdening that person by sharing that it's your problem. You're the only one that can fix it. And so by letting someone else into your problem, you're now burdening them with something they have no control over, and it's going to affect them, at least for that moment that you're sharing it with them. And for what purpose? Why are you doing that? Deal with it or don't, but you're going to suffer alone in silence until it gets fixed, or it doesn't, and that's just your life. Another potentially flawed belief. But that was pretty core to who I was prior to starting this. I feel like I'm not a completely different person. I feel like I'm evolving into a better person having done this podcast, and probably for the psychedelics without a doubt as well.
Well,
Kind of both of those went hand in hand for a while.
That core belief, did you change it? What is it evolved into? Do you no longer believe that? You seem to be implying.
Well, yeah, I don't think I could, having gone through those experiences and having done this podcast, I don't think it holds true anymore. I think it's kind of been shattered. I'm not necessarily sure what it's been replaced with yet. I haven't spent that much time thinking about it, but it's definitely not there anymore. It's kind of hard to believe that and also believe, that you have to cultivate and nurture relationships. And one of the things that I've also realized through those experiences that, in theme with relationships, is that you have to lean on people and you have to let people lean on you, and you also have to lean on people. You can't just be the one that is letting people lean on you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not, a relationship doesn't build that way. You have to let people help you, otherwise it's not a real relationship. And that's been a big thing for me. I would rather, still probably true, more so than I would like to this day, but I would rather die than have somebody help me. Like, if I'm asking for help, shit is severely going wrong.
Right.
I was up at a college visiting my girlfriend one time out of state, and my truck got towed because I parked in this parking lot, and it was before a football game, and I didn't know and she didn't know. So I wake up in the morning, truck's gone. I'm thinking, oh, fuck. I don't know where they towed it to. I called the towing company. They're like, yeah, it's, 2-3 miles outside of town. You're going to have to come pick it up. I'm like, okay. Talking to my girlfriend, I'm like, I'll just go walk and get it. You go to the game. We were supposed to go to the game that day. You go to the game. I'll go get the truck. I'll meet up with you afterwards. It's fine. She's like, no, I have a friend. He'll drive us. We'll get there. I'm like, no, I don't want to bother anybody. You go to the game. I'll go get the truck. Basically, long story short, it ends up both of us walking, not talking, because she's mad at me for making us walk. When I didn't make her walk. I was happy to walk. We're walking. It's raining. 3-mile walk. We show up at the towing company. It's like ridiculous fee for them to tow it just that far. And it ends with the guy saying, oh, you guys walked here? We have a pickup service. We could have come and picked you up for free. And so that's who I was. That I would just do something stupid rather than inconvenience someone, even if it's not a huge inconvenience, just to appease something in myself.
Wow.
Yeah. A lot to unpack there.
Yeah, not asking for help is I've been known to do that as well, particularly from my parents. My buddy was telling me the other day, he's like, because he was talking about the fact that everybody buys a house by getting money from their parents with a down payment. And he was saying, it's like, you haven't done that. I'm like, yeah, but I don't have a house. Like, that they're related. Those are two related concepts. But he's like, yeah, everybody gets help from their parents. That's like the way of the world. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, I try to avoid doing that as much as I can. But yeah, I mean, that's...
It definitely hampers relationships, not letting people help you. Mm-hmm. It's almost a foundational pillar of building something meaningful with another person. Is the idea that you can be there for me and I'll be there for you.
Well, I mean, especially on telling them about your problems. Like, it's one thing if you're trying to borrow money from someone, but if it's just telling them about your problems, I mean, if someone's a good friend, they'll just listen. Or like, I mean, listening to your friend's problems, that's like a basic part of being a friend, and like just shutting up and listening, because that helps so much. Just listening and being like, no, I'm sorry, that sucks, and you don't have to have amazing advice or
even a solution
or at all. Just listening helps a lot, Yeah,
I was never good at that part. I could listen. I could be there for you. I could help you.
Right.
But there's reciprocal nature of that. Not my strong suit.
So now do you share problems with like male friends, parents, girls you date, or what's like your...
No. Nope, still don't share problems.
Right.
But I'm aware of the problem,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm aware of the pitfalls in that line of thinking. So I would be more apt to, I don't know if necessarily share the problem, but open up to somebody a little more about the issue, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's been one of the interesting things about doing this podcast, is just finding the balance of being open and honest. I feel like that's another thing that's really important to any semblance of longevity, or even just getting out of this. What I would want is, you have to be honest. You have to be brutally honest about your life. And there are things that, you know, it's weird because it's a public forum. Like, it's a natural conversation between you and I, and it feels like it's just us, but there is a back end of this.
But most of your guests, like most of your guests don't talk to you about yourself as much as I do, at least from when I watch. Like,
no, I am definitely more quiet about the personal aspect.
Yeah.
Which is almost kind of a cheat in this, because I almost don't have to most of the time.
Correct.
I can just,
it can be just all about the guest. Yeah, it's all about the guest.
The guest talks for a couple hours, I listen, maybe throw in a question or two, and then we have a good time.
Totally. Nice. So what's, I know the previous guys, David and Eric, talked to you when you started the recording. They were talking to you about the background of these decorations. That's like how the podcast started. Are these just like, the decorations are all bands you like or albums you like, or what's going on?
There, I have a stack of records that I've commandeered from my dad, and so those are some of them. A couple of those my sister got me. I think it's the America one and the Johnny Cash one.
Okay.
Sister got me.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm gonna have like a rotation, I think.
Oh,
swap
really?
them out. Yeah, I'm gonna move all the records over here eventually. I haven't quite made the jump yet, but then I'll swap them out when it feels necessary, when I feel like a change.
So the two comments I have are that, first of all, my brother and my dad are like die-hard Bruce Springsteen fans. Like in New Jersey, Bruce Springsteen's really big because he's from New Jersey. You know, I'm from New Jersey. My brother's probably seen him live at least 50 times, because he's been seeing him since we were kids. I mean, like, you know, like just the whole time. So that's Bruce. I mean, my brother might have even seen him 100 times. He still see, like, I'll see my brother posting on Facebook that he's
at another concert.
Yeah, it's like my brother's got like teenage kids, you know. And then Johnny Cash, the funny connection that I have with Johnny Cash is that, so my experience is that, like, people who grew up in the country, Johnny Cash is a huge figure. People who grew up in the city don't give a fuck about Johnny Cash, right? So I grew up much more in the city. I'm like suburbs. I grew up in the New York City suburbs. I'm suburbs urban guy. I'm not redneck country guy, right? But I talk to other people who have different backgrounds. So I used to work with this super redneck guy at a coffee shop in Eureka. And he was always telling me, I mean, he would say this all the time. He's like, bro, you're the only guy who's got a voice as deep as Johnny Cash. You got to sing Johnny Cash. You got to start learning Johnny Cash. And we would talk about this all the time. It was like all the time. He was the baker at a coffee shop, at this coffee shop that I managed. And so he had his own little like music setup in the back. Like he didn't have to listen to the music that we were playing for the customers. And he was always playing Johnny Cash back there and saying that he's like, dude, you got to learn this song. It was like just a very funny memory. That's like the thing I always associate with Johnny Cash is those conversations that I had with this guy Patrick. So anyway, when the camera first went on, the first time I saw this background, I'm like, oh, Bruce Springsteen and Johnny Cash. That's like a funny.
It's an omen.
Yeah, that's like two parts of my life. You know, the redneck kid talking to me, and then the way I grew up. You know, and then
great musicians.
Yeah, and then Billy Joel. People make fun of Billy Joel. I like
Billy Joel.
Yeah, he's like super good pop music, easy listening. It's just easy.
Yeah. Some great music back then. Great music now. I'll swap some. I'm gonna change it up a little bit because you can only see the top 3 and then the Little River Band down there behind me.
Oh, okay.
But we'll figure it out. Maybe I'll do 4 in a row.
Oh, bro, I mean, I'm not even, now I see myself in the camera. I've got my sunglasses on.
No, you're good, man. We're just chopping it up. Yeah.
All right. Is this a good look? Sunglasses? All right.
Yeah,
Let's
it's
say
working.
it is.
It's working.
Okay. It's too late now. I mean,
Yeah, well, now we're going.
yeah.
But it's been fun. We'll make some more tweaks. I'm always cranking out ideas. I do like the AC though. Having the AC, it's a nice temperature in here. Nobody's sweating.
Right.
That feels like a great upgrade.
And that helps when people are on camera. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you got 3 cameras in here. Yeah, I saw that third camera when you had your buddies in here.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Steady progress.
Yeah.
It's the name of the game.
Always something new.
Keep your head down. Keep moving.
Man, hanging that TV, that must have been a little bit of a project.
It was it wasn't that bad. I was a little concerned about those rafters in the attic, but that little T-frame, people just listening can't see it. Even on the video, you can't see it, but we've got a TV I installed hanging from the ceiling. It's a big ass TV. It's a 65-inch TV.
Yeah, it's huge. And it seems like you got it used because it's a little bit scratched up.
I gotta clean. I gotta get some Windex in here to clean the face of that.
Where'd you get it?
Buddy of mine, Andy, who actually produced a couple episodes back in the day, ran cameras for me. He was moving and I had broken a TV. It had broken during the earthquake a couple of years ago. And so he was like, hey man, I'll sell you this one. I was like, cool.
Yeah.
Ideally, down the road, I'd like to have a TV, maybe one there, but definitely one behind me and one behind the guests so that you don't have to turn to look at it. You could just look up and you'd see the TV. That way you're still in line with cameras and everything.
Right. And also with the microphone, because what happens is people are talking off like this, the sound quality goes down.
Yep. And then you turn your face and you're just getting a profile shot.
It's a mess, yeah.
But that'll be good for a bit. I think this one will. Excited to put that thing to use.
Sweet.
Yeah. Steady progress.
Looking good, bro.
Steady progress. It's always something. Just keeps going.
Yeah.
That's part of the fun, though. What do you say we get the hell out of here, man? We've done 3.5 hours.
It's usually a long
Feels
conversation.
About right? Yeah. Do you want to plug Arcata News again, your Instagram, where people can find you? These videos coming out.
So go to Arcata News on Instagram. If you want to watch my old news stories, I shouldn't call them old. My news stories that are the main thing I've done creatively, they're all on Facebook at Arcata News. And they're also on YouTube at Arcata News. If you want to see what I'm doing right now, it's mainly on Instagram, on Arcata News. And that is more of these hype videos and shows and performances and some news reporting on Instagram. I'm going to see how it goes. I have a feeling people don't want to see news reporting on Instagram. No one opens their Instagram app expecting to use their brain. So I don't think that's the right forum, but we shall see.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Yeah, man. It was fun.
All right.
All right.